in, I just decided that I wanted to see if I could learn another language and raised my hand to try to learn Chinese, and that's kind of the end of the story, and how I ended up in Asia. I've been in the Foreign Service now for 16 years, 16, yeah, almost 16 and a half years. Um, Spent time, my first tour was in Ecuador. Then I was back to Washington, where I worked as a staff assistant to the Assistant Secretary for Asia. This was during the middle of what was going on, the Beijing Olympics, the big tsunami that ravaged both Indonesia and Thailand. So we're working on those issues and relief issues. Then and of course, there are always issues with North Korea. Then later, I moved on to be I was the desk officer, country officer for East Timor, which was at that time the newest country in the world, still Asia's newest democracy. 1 million strong, but doing well after a long history of colonization, first by the Portuguese for 500 years, and the Indonesians maybe 400 years by the Portuguese, and then another 25 brutal years under under Indonesia, and now off to the races, doing well. Although they have lots of development issues they're striving to overcome. But then I said, listen, I'm really interested in learning Mandarin. Want to go to try my hand at China, and so then I was selected for the 2-year language program, where you do 1 year of Mandarin at the Foreign Service Institute outside of Washington. And that's your job full time for 1 year. Every day, that's what you do, is you are a full-time language student. All of your teachers are native Mandarin speakers, some from the mainland, some from Taiwan. And then my second year of language, I spent in Taiwan at our school there, our language school there, which has been there. It goes back, I don't know, like 50, 60 years. Been there a long time. I think it started out in Taichung and later moved to Taipei. And at that time, it was until like last year, was housed in an area that used to be part of the U.S. naval base that had been there after World War II for many years, and along with USAID, and had done a really great job to transform Taiwan from what was then, a donor recipient country, a very agriculturally based economy, to one of the world's technological powerhouses in the world, where they're now an aid donor to many countries around the world. So it's one of the more successful, I think, examples of U.S. development assistance. So after completing language there, I moved on to Beijing, where I was a political officer and the senior human rights officer for 3 years, where I was focused on issues of human rights, religious freedom, participation, what else? Trafficking in persons, just all of the sticky stuff, which was a really interesting portfolio. I call it like the best and worst job in the Foreign Service. Best in the sense that I met some of the most incredible, inspiring, committed people you would ever meet. I mean, China's equivalent of their own, Harriet Tubmans and Martin Luther Kings and just all of the real leaders and all kinds of white people really putting their lives on the line for values and for other people. But it was also the worst in the sense that I often saw them get absolutely crushed by their country and their government, their system. And so it was a really difficult job trying to balance, the United States' interest in promoting democracy and universal freedoms, which, often was a delicate balance with our broader kind of strategic and security goals and economic goals in that country. So I did that for 3 years or so, came back and did 3 years working in the secretary's office, doing primarily crisis management stuff. So I was spent a year as a senior watch officer under Kerry, and then 2 years as the crisis management coordinator running our office that helped coordinate, do everything from evacuations from natural disasters, civil conflict, preparing folks to get ready for those types of things or to prepare for that, looking at how we doing contingency plannings for things like global pandemics, et cetera. Although, well, we could imagine something like this, but just living it out is one thing versus kind of reading about it or planning for it or doing exercises about it. And then after that job, I spent 2 years as the deputy director of the Office of Taiwan Coordination, which is an office in the State Department that is dedicated to helping to promote and build our unofficial relationship with the people on Taiwan. So I talked a little bit about that, but that was a really great job. We do not have an embassy in Taiwan. Well, let me take a little step back. So Dr. Shin, stop me if any of this is retread. So just a little bit about the U.S.-Taiwan relationship, which is a very unique relationship in U.S. Foreign policy. So going back in the near recent history, so the U.S. has had relations kind of with China, for much of our existence as a country. Obviously, China is much older than the United States, 5,000 years of history, multiple dynasties. We had folks who were consuls and legation officers and trade ministers in China going back to the early 1800s at least. And in different parts of China, some places where we are now. Beijing was not the big thing, many years ago. At one point, Shanghai obviously was always a big bustling port. Wuhan actually was a place where we had a pretty big presence. We've had places out west, Chongqing, Chengdu. I don't know how long we've been up in Xinjiang, but for quite some time, and a couple other places around China, Guangzhou, certainly Hong Kong, etc. One of the things that we've been doing is we were focused. I think the relationship for the many early years was primarily a trade relationship. And when we got to the Second World War, the United States and China were amongst the Allied nations pushing back against, at that time, it was Imperial Japan in that region. And the United States actually fought shoulder to shoulder with Chinese compatriots in various parts. In fact, my grandfather, or my maternal grandfather, was in the U.S. Army, and he fought in what was called on his service papers, the Indochina-Burma Theater. And I did a little digging, and part of what that regiment did was help to build a road going through India, Burma through China, which you will help, for supply routes and that kind of thing. There's a very famous, just slipped my mind, but a very famous U.S. fighting regiment that was out in Chongqing. And so we've had this history for a long time, but we've also had a very deep and abiding people-to-people relationship as well with the Chinese people. And we've had, there were missionaries there for many years who had done lots of good work, including building hospitals, schools. Again, China was in many ways a very feudal society. Even China talks about the many thousands of years of history and dynasty. But it's really, for much of that time, you couldn't really call China one unified state. It was kind of many different, in some ways, kingdoms, sometimes, that fought amongst each other, dynasties that rose and fell, but that, were almost never fully occupying the entirety of China's current geographic footprint. So the government we're working with at that time was the first kind of imperial government in China. That was the first Republican government of Chiang Kai-shek, um, who had risen to power in what was it, 1911, in China, and had come to run and establish what was called the Republic of China. So at versus the, what was it, the Qing court, the Qing court, which had just left and kind of been deposed. So that was starting in 1911. At the same time, the Communist Party of China was beginning to form in the 1920s. Mao was one of the leaders, but he eventually rose to become the biggest leader. But following the Second World War, those two factions came into conflict, and China had its own civil war. The ruling national party, the Kuomintang, what is it in English? Kuomintang. Well, it's National Party, but the KMT are the letters that we use in English. Lost to the CCP, the Chinese, the Communist Party of China, led by Mao Zedong, and Chiang Kai-shek. His government and all his folks retreated, moving down slowly southward, ultimately to Taiwan. And so they then established the ROC government on Taiwan. The United States continued to recognize the government of China, Chiang Kai-shek's government, which had now moved from Peking down to Taipei. So we maintain relations with them. Why? Well, frankly, because they were an elected government, but they were also our allies during the Second World War. China experienced terrible atrocities during the Second World War. I think you've heard of comfort women in Korea and in other places, but it was just as bad, if not worse, in many parts of China during that period of time. Now, they moved down to Taiwan. Now, Taiwan had obviously been there a long time. Taiwan had been going back to at least the late 1800s, had been a colony of Imperial Japan. Now, it's really interesting. If you talk to Chinese in mainland China, there is a very deep, strong, and abiding animus against Japan. There is a very, very strong anti-Japan sentiment in mainland China. In Taiwan, and that traces back to really a very brutal history during the Japanese occupation of China. But in Taiwan, the history with Japan is very different. Japan, whereas it was the Chinese army that occupied much of China, it was the Japanese Navy. The Japanese China occupied mainland China. It was the Japanese Navy that occupied Taiwan, and their governing ethos was very different. The Japanese Navy was not nearly as brutal as the army was in the mainland. The Japanese Navy built Taiwan's kind of like sewer infrastructure, which doesn't sound sexy, but that's a big deal if for places that don't have that. And much of that infrastructure remains to this day. You'll see Taipei in the old buildings and a lot of that, even like the main government palace, the guest house, a lot of that stuff, that was built, by the Japanese. They really advocated for education and promoted public education, which wasn't largely available before that. Remember, Taiwan is not, monolith. China has, what is it? It has like 55 minority groups, and Taiwan although it's not very large geographically, has quite a few minority groups themselves. So there were people speaking lots of languages. So the lingua franca in Taiwan at the time that Chiang Kai-shek and the KMT arrived was not Mandarin. It was the most commonly understood language on the island at that time was actually Japanese. So you had folks coming down speaking, now Chiang Kai-shek's folks come down, and the way that, that native Taiwans will tell it is they were worse than Japanese. They were very brutal. They found them to be, they call them like, uncivilized, not very, they weren't focused on building the country, on making things better for the people, but in, kind of establishing their foothold in their government. They established, KMT-led national businesses, is that what you call them? National business, state-owned businesses, et cetera. And most of all of this economic activity, most of this was to the exclusion of the inhabitants of Taiwan that were already there. So it was almost an apartheid system between, those folks who were, they call White Iran, the folks who had come from the mainland, and Bunshengren, the folks who had already been in or on Taiwan, some of them going back hundreds and hundreds of years. I'm sure you guys will talk a little bit more about Taiwan's history and, its Austronesian culture and, where all the many different peoples of Taiwan came. But, folks have been there a long time, same way as in the United States. When the colonists arrived, you had, folks who have been here thousands of years with their own culture and history and traditions. So over time, that there was tension that began to build, on Taiwan between the natives and now this newly arrived group of mainlanders who were, for them, interlopers. And you'll hear when you go there, and I'm sure you'll visit the Araba Museum, the 228 Museum, which was kind of an uprising, really it was a massacre that happened in February 28th of
47.
47?
47.
Okay, thank you, of 47. And there's different stories about how it started, but essentially, there was a small, you listen to these stories, it sounds like the United States in some ways, right? Where there was, some shopkeeper or somebody who was, selling some stuff on the street, and they came into a conflict with one of the local soldiers, and then some of the people came to the defense of, the local person, and next thing you know, it was a lot of local folks were dead. And so they now commemorate that. Now, meanwhile, the United States continued, again, we recognize the government, Chiang Kai-shek's government on Taiwan as the legitimate ruling government of China. Again, immediately, because this was our ally. These were our allies when we fought in World War II, which were just like a couple of years ago. 1949 is when they left and went down there. Civil War concluded in 45. So we're not talking about that long ago. United States gave a lot of money to Taiwan, again, on the development assistance, but also military assistance. You'll see that there were a steady stream of high American officials traveling to Taiwan to engage with the government of Chiang Kai-shek. Another advantage that they had is really soft power. Chiang Kai-shek's wife and her sisters, actually, which is a very interesting family. That's a whole nother history. But these three very influential sisters all studied in the United States. So maybe two of them at Wellesley, another one at
Actually, they're all from Macon, studying in Macon, Georgia.
That's right. Oh, Wesleyan. What's the name? That's the Wesleyan. That's right.
The Macon, the Wesleyan, they have an archive of these three sisters. If not a pandemic, I will take you go there to visit that archive. They have actually a small museum. I talked to them about 2 years ago. I want to go. Someday maybe we will go drive there to look at it. Yeah. Someone want to research will be interesting. Yes.
So Madam Chiang Kai-shek was very she was a fluent English speaker. She was a practicing, I think maybe Presbyterian. She was a Christian. So, it was very easy for her to engage with, these leaders coming from the United States. Some of these people were, the friends of classmates, etc. But it's very interesting. This is just a quick aside. And so like two of them were extremely influential in Taiwan. One of those sisters actually became like a leading member, like the most senior woman in the Communist Party of China. And so that is just like a really fantastic kind of dichotomy where essentially, they were at loggerheads. It's really fascinating. So something to look into. So anyway, so it goes on. President Eisenhower visits, Nixon visits as vice president to Taiwan. There's all this stuff happening. And then, we're getting into the middle of the Cold War. And some in Washington, certain corners of Washington, the calculus starts to change. Yes, these guys were our great allies and partners during our most recent existential threat, which was fascism and imperial China, Nazism, and all of that. But now we're facing the existential threat of communism spread around the world. Clearly, in this geographic area, you have China and Russia being two of the biggest communist countries there, and the fear of that spreading. And so historians will continue to kind of tease this out. But President Nixon made a strategic decision going back to maybe 72 was the first secret mission that Nixon made to not Nixon, Kissinger made to mainland China to start conversations towards normalization of relations. Later, President Nixon himself visited publicly, but it wasn't until President Jimmy Carter in 1979 ultimately made the switch to recognize to recognize the CCP in Beijing as the ruling government of China. Now, of course, there are many people in the United States Congress and in America who were not in favor of this, who said, how can you abandon this democratic stalwart partner for Red China? That's what it was called at the time, Red China. And so what came of that was something really unique. And so Congress passed something called the Taiwan Relations Act of 1979. It's the only thing that we have like it. It really spells out the guidelines for an enduring and a robust unofficial relationship with Taiwan. It calls for us to help provide for Taiwan's defense. It talks about our commitment to our economic, cultural, and other relations is what the language says. And so what we had in 1979 with the establishment of those relations with Beijing, at the same time, Congress almost unanimously and great bipartisan fashion drafted the Taiwan Relations Act, which said, even though we're recognizing China, Beijing's government, we are not abandoning our commitment to Taiwan. Now, of course, that was not an easy thing. So remember, and what happened after World War II? We have the establishment of the United Nations. We have the 5 permanent members. One of those permanent members is China. That means that Taiwan lost their seat in New York. That was a really big deal. There's lots of histories out there about, maybe Chiang Kai-shek was offered a deal that he refused. Actually, there's a lot of scholarship to support this, where he was offered a deal like, we're going to recognize Beijing as the government of China, but we will recognize Taipei as the government of Taiwan. So, but that was anathema to the KMT, because they believed, and some in the KMT even to this day believe, that they are the legitimate ruling, governing party of all of China, and that one day they will be able to get back to unification. So that is a really important thing. This issue of unification, which is language that is used on both sides of the island of the Taiwan Strait. Beijing talks about unification. Taiwan talks about unification, but they're talking about two different terms, or on two different terms. One is Beijing is Taiwan. You guys are our unfinished business of the great rejuvenation of the Chinese people that the Communist Party of China that is brought about, that is reunited all of these various parts of China that we've talked about, going all the way west from Xinjiang and Tibet, all the way, east and north, touching, the North Korean border, and all the way down. We now have Hong Kong back. That's another thing we can talk about a little bit if you want to. And Taiwan is kind of the last thing that's hanging out there, that last unfinished business. Taiwan, for its part, the KMT, the nationalists, say, we're still just in retreat, and we will one day be able to reunify and take our rightful place as the governing party of all of China, and finally expel these illegitimate folks in Beijing. Now, it is now 2021, and I think most observers on both sides of the strait, if you really ask them, don't believe, and most scholars everywhere don't believe that dream of the KMT somehow managing and ruling all of China is going to come into existence on any timeline that's discernible at the moment. But what many people in Taiwan are now, so that's kind of where the two sides ended up. In the meantime, in those intervening years in Taiwan really was not what we could call a democracy. The KMT was a one-party ruling party. They were very autocratic in their rule. They were not very inclusive in their policy making. I talked about how, folks, there was a clear class system that was based on, in large part, on whether or not you were in Taiwan because you had come with the nationalists or not. If you came from mainland China, you were more likely to get good jobs, to get into the right schools, to have those types of opportunities. Others were relegated to, kind of working class if they were lucky. There was, sorry, I'm missing the word in English here. There was not military rule, what do you call it? But there was like suspension of civil rights, and they had the white terror where, people who were voicing dissenting views were being disappeared, taken away, jailed for
the martial law.
Sorry, martial law. Thank you, martial law. Who were being disappeared, who were being jailed for very long periods of time. There was, in the southern part of Taiwan, this is like Kaohsiung, that area. That is the area where the DPP party was kind of birthed. That is the Democratic People's Party. So that was, I would say, the first and still the largest kind of opposition party to KMT rule. The people who were running now, Taiwan had all the vestiges of democracy. They had a president. They had parliament. Elected members of parliament, but the elected members of parliament were people who had been elected in mainland China from the KMT. Some of these people were elected in like the 30s and 40s, and they maintained those titles for life. So we're talking in the 80s and 90s. These are old people, who are still running, in the same positions. And even those senior leadership jobs in some ways were all changed, were passed down in a dynastic fashion, where it went from Chiang Kai-shek to family members to others in a tight inner circle. And it wasn't until 1989, 91, where Taiwan had its first real election, for the presidency. And that was, due to enlightened leadership at that time. still, the KMT won like all kinds of, seats. But it was the opening for democracy. And so, and it wasn't until 2000, the election of Chen Shui-bian, which the first election election of a president by from a non-KMT member. He ran for. He had two administrations of 4 years. Went back to the KMT, which had another 2 terms, and the current president Taiwan was elected as the Taiwan's first woman president and was reelected like a year ago now. It was actually for another 4-year term. And so Taiwan itself since like the early 90s has truly undergone a complete democratic reformation, where it always had a political culture. If you used to like, this is before you guys were born, but or when you were very young, but they used to show like scenes from Taiwan's legislature where folks are actually getting into fist fights on the floor and stuff, throw stuff at each other. Thank God they kind of gotten past that, but it's still a very dynamic political environment, lots of debate. There are different parties, different views. The KMT, I would say, is also now starting to undergo a bit of a generational change as well, where, although, they still are the party of unification and conciliation with the mainland. I think most folks, and then most of this is because Chairman Xi Jinping has been so overtly, China used to leave a lot of room, kind of rhetorical room for people to interpret. So there's this 1992 consensus that you'll hear about a lot. And this was an agreement between the two sides. It said, the 92 consensus basically recognizes that there's the two sides, that there's one governing party in Beijing of China, but they don't say which one, so it's a kind of a safe, face-saving effort where both sides could kind of hold out the hope of reconciliation, and we'll get there one day. She has narrowed all of those definitions in ways that have left little room for the KMT to make make an argument that Beijing one day will give us we have some hope of reunification in our terms. That's not happening anymore. And so you see people really having to do a rethink of what the future of Taiwan versus with China will look like. And you also have happening in Taiwan is, whereas, I talked about how folks moved down from the mainland and they saw themselves very much as Chinese, Chinese people like in Taiwan. And they still do have people who are very supportive of the Chinese government in Taiwan. That is a shrinking minority. But it's no longer, but you have the vast majority of people in Taiwan view themselves as Taiwanese. And it's interesting because that is no longer, bifurcated by whether or not your ancestors, when your ancestors arrived on the island. So there is, because of this growing threat from China, it has actually fostered greater national identity in Taiwan or on Taiwan. And so that's gotten interesting. They always do these surveys fairly regularly where they ask a couple of questions. Do you favor unification with China, meaning essentially that Taiwan will become like a province of China? Do you favor independence of Taiwan? Taiwan is a sovereign independent nation. Or do you favor the status quo? Which is what it is now, which is like, while Taiwan is not a recognized member of the United Nations as a sovereign state, they have autonomy over their internal affairs, their lawmaking, their judicial system, all of that. And for most of this period of time, the majority of people said status quo. Let's just keep this messy but thing going where we're able to kind of, yes, there's this thing hanging over our head, the specter of some kind of invasion, but let's just keep it moving. Well, and there was always like a strong 20% or so that was like, no, we're going to reunite. And then there was, another about 20%, no, 10. Okay, my percentages are obviously off, but there was another minority that was pro-independence. But that number of folks who are pro-unification, on China's terms, has really, really shrunk. It's really, really shrunk in a way that is no longer politically palatable for as a kind of governing philosophy. So that's happening. Now, where does U.S. policy come into all of this? Well, again, the United States clearly has an interest in maintaining a relationship with China, with Big China, the People's Republic of China, with the 1.4 billion people that are there, with this nuclear armed state, with this country that has a very, that, in the last 30, 40 years has undergone a complete metamorphosis from a very kind of agrarian society to the number 2 economy in the world, with all kinds of tools and its own innovations and all of those things. We clearly have a lot of issues, and what you've seen in this administration that have come to surface. I will say that the concerns are not new that we've seen here. Even when I was there under the entire Obama administration, Dr. Shin was a part of this 100,000 strong initiative, which was a part of the Obama administration, which said, hey, we want to double down on building this relationship with China. So we want to make sure that we have 100,000 Americans that are studying in China, like every year. I think that was the goal initially. And we want to have 100,000 Chinese students studying in the United States. Well, Chinese passed us a long time ago. There was like 1 million Chinese students in the U.S., but we actually met our goal. We exceeded our goal with students coming, American students going into China. Wow. Not all for a semester, some for doing programs like you guys are going to do for a week, couple of weeks, Morehouse, for years now, starting with Dr. Yang, had this program going where the faculty and students went and traveled to mainland China, and were able to spend a couple of weeks there, which has been great. So that was a big part of it. We were looking at ways that we could cooperate in lots of different. So it was a real focus on cooperation. Now, at the same time, I can tell you there were lots of complaints. There were complaints of that it wasn't equal, it wasn't reciprocal. That yes, your students can come to the United States, your faculty members can come to the United States, and they can enjoy the same status and equal footing of our own students, of our own professors. But when our people go to China, they are held in a box. They're not able to go out freely. They're not able to say whatever they want to say. They're not able to write what they want to write. And this same thing on the business side. We welcome all of this business investment into the United States from China. And you come here, you are just held to the same standard as anybody else. But when our business is in China, we were fine. And it's a huge boom. But then it will run into this wall where, for instance, in a lot of companies, in China, you have rules different than ours. They said, well, if you want to invest here, you got to have a Chinese partner. And they said, okay, we'll have a Chinese partner. But once that Chinese partner company kind of got to the point that they understood, or they got the intellectual know-how from the American company on how to produce the thing or how to run the process, then they would kick out the American partner by force. Sometimes, it was a couple of cases that I know of personally where the Chinese business owners would kind of like physically detain the American partner, like held on the company compound, and the Chinese government responsible, this is just how we deal with our disputes here. Access to the media, of course, that was a huge a huge difference there. So all of these things were happening. Lots of intellectual property theft that was happening, people were aware of, but folks didn't want to make waves. You know, companies had made the decision, well, like, yes, this is really bad, but we're still making money. So it's kind of like, you know, if you look on that curve, they're at the point, they're still making money. They know that they're hurting, but they were making a calculus that was worth it, at least in the short term. Academic institutions were doing the same thing, you know, saying, well, you know, well, yeah, we have to make these concessions, but it's still benefiting us. But, you know, at some point that really started to happen, come to a head. And I think the Trump administration really went full barrel into, we got to rebalance this thing. And then they also took a look at, it's not just what's happening kind of American institutions in China, but also how China was competing in unfair ways with US interests in other places around the world. So for example, we're trying to compete, same kind of contract, same kind of project, and the Chinese are paying a lot of money under the table, you know, doing all kinds of underhanded stuff, and our people are getting screwed over because even our American companies overseas are still held to certain, you know, standards of, you know, transparency, et cetera. And so they couldn't compete. And so a lot of this has been about trying to rebalance that. Now, so that's happening on one hand. And then you have Taiwan, which stands as such a clear comparison or contrast to what you're seeing in China. Taiwan is open. Taiwan is transparent. Taiwan is welcoming of foreign investment. Taiwan, of course, they're like Taiwan. I mean, they're not just like giving away the store. These are very smart, shrewd, you know, profit-seeking companies, et cetera. But they partner with, we share a common approach. Their legal system also constrains them in ways that ours does. Their property rights law are compatible with American law. Oh, they're just up to universal standards. So when you look at like China, which China insists that everything about China has to be held to, like, you know, this Chinese everything has to be like with Chinese characteristics, which means like, oh, you know, so on one day, oh, you know, well, we're just a developing country, so you have to make these concessions for us because we're still growing. But then in the next breath, they say, well, we're a big country and you got to respect us. And so it's really, you know, whatever kind of fits their interest and in ways that really kind of distort the global market, et cetera. So you're seeing this increasingly autocratic, and then within China's own borders, it's increasingly autocratic, shrinking space for debate. Whereas, you know, a lot of this economic growth that we talked about was due in a lot of ways to China in its own way, reform and opening up is what it was called. It was this goes back to this goes back to I see his face, but I'm forgetting it. Deng Xiaoping, sorry. Deng Xiaoping in the 80s, saying, okay, you know, Mao and his crew were very much like, we control everything from the top down. That led to a lot of famine, that led to a lot of violence, that did not lead into the growth that they were looking for. Reform and opening up, which was not, you know, American style, you know, open markets, but it was moving in that direction and was allowing for that type of experimentation in certain markets. It was allowing for, that's when China opened up to foreign exchange students, well, not just foreign exchange students, but to allowing their people to go travel abroad. Because before, like, that was a no-no. And so it allowed for new ideas to come, for China to develop new capacities, et cetera. She was moving in the opposite direction. He talked about like made in China 20, made in China maybe 2030, but it's his plan where, like, you know, everything 2025. Oh, so we're getting close. So yeah, that's right. So everything had to be, you know, done in China, by China, for China. And what wasn't said parenthetically is by any means necessary. So that means we can steal that stuff from anybody we have to. We can cajole anybody to get whatever we need. We can force, smaller countries to give up like their sovereignty so that we can like take up their coastlines and so that we can have access to whatever. So it was a lot of stuff. And at the same time, we're not held to any of these other things because we're calling ourselves a developing country. We were able to, get certain benefits in the global international financial markets, international financial system, all kinds of stuff. And then and so we saw them moving in on Hong Kong. And as we've seen, Hong Kong, there was an agreement between China and the Brits that, after returning Hong Kong to China, that they had like 50 years of time that Hong Kong could basically continue have their autonomy before they, transition to something that was more run by the central government. Clearly, this is way earlier than that, interfering in elections and all of that kind of stuff. And so seeing that writing on the wall, and not just that writing on the wall, but Taiwan was directly threatened. They dispatched like fighters to encircle Taiwan on numerous occasions, warships around Taiwan, all these kinds of things that were very kind of provocative. And it really accelerated after the election of Tsai Ing-wen. Now, some would say because the DPP is the party of independence. That's what they were founded on. But this is not what Tsai Ing-wen's platform has been. She's very practical. She's not out to make waves because she knows that, you can't get the economic growth in Taiwan that she's looking for if you have to spend all of your time and resources trying to keep China at bay. But President Xi very early on decided that he couldn't work with her. He refused to, and made things as difficult as possible. Now, scholars say all kinds of things. Why is this happening? Is it because, again, the DPP has this independence streak in their platform, even though she has no history of being that way? Is it because she's a woman and he can't deal with a woman leader? A lot of people say based on some of the rhetoric we hear coming out of Zhongnanhai, that is definitely a big part of it. For all the great things that China has done, one thing it has not done is to include women in any equitable way. And if you look at, we have this thing in the office. Actually, they produce it, the Chinese, like this. It's this big banner about all the top leaderships. So you start with the PSB, the Politburo, steering committee. Then you go to state councilors. Then you go all the party chiefs, all of that, and you'll have 100 people on this chart, and you'll have maybe not 10 women who have gotten to that senior level. And so you can imagine, and this is the same thing that we deal with in the United States with racial justice. If people are not used to dealing with people who are different than them, then when they have to deal with folks as their equals, it gets really nasty and ugly. And you start calling people nasty women, and you start, saying, those people and all of this kind of ugly stuff. So I think that's part of it. But regardless of what the reasons are, it's very dangerous. And so the United States and China asserts that the United States is now violating the One China principle, which is hilarious to us because the United States has never agreed to the One China principle. We have the One China policy, which says very clearly that that the United States only recognizes one China, that government is in Beijing. We also say things like, in part of our Taiwan policy, and there's this 3 joint communiques. There's all of these other things that are part of kind of what our policy is. Part of it, they normally say we're violating the One China principle, which is wrong. Even they talk about the One China policy. One China principle says China is China, and we can take over everything. We can do whatever we want to. We've never agreed to that. But the One China policy is U.S. policy. And then there's the 3 joint communiques. So there were 3 letters. I guess all three of them were from Reagan to Chinese leaders, basically spelling out some stuff. One of them was on arms sales. It said that we hope to over time decrease our arms sales to Taiwan commensurate with the threat. That's the thing, is commensurate with the threat from China. Now, China has spent a lot of money and a lot of effort to aim more stuff at Taiwan, and not just building up, but also doing exercises, doing all kinds of things. So we don't feel credibly that we can, absolutely stop. They haven't met the terms of that agreement. And there's a few things like that. We will send from time to time senior officials. So of course, we recognize we don't. So our relationship. I got to that a little bit. We have an unofficial relationship. We don't have an embassy in Taiwan. Relations between the United States and Taiwan are managed through the American Institute in Taiwan, which is an unofficial organization that manages the economic and cultural and other relations with the people on Taiwan. Headquarters of that place is in Roslyn, Virginia, right outside of DC. And then we have an office in Taipei and another smaller office in Kaohsiung. Now, everybody knows that unofficially operates as our diplomatic, that's our official interaction with Taiwan. It used to be the case that when people were posted, State Department people, diplomats were posted to Taiwan through the American Institute in Taiwan, you had to actually resign from the State Department for that period of time. We no longer do that. But when we travel, we don't use our diplomatic passports, we use our regular blue passports. We don't have diplomatic visas, we have something called like a courtesy visa. There's all of these rules that we have about how we interact with Taiwan visitors who come. For instance, the president of Taiwan never visits the United States. She does transit the United States. So for example, she'll come through, because they do still have like 15 diplomatic allies. And so they got to go through somewhere, right? So she'll come through and she might do a couple of days in New York, maybe meet with some different folks in California or Houston or wherever, and then go on to wherever she's going in the Pacific or in Central America, wherever. Sometimes some of our officials will meet with her. She won't come to Washington. She hasn't, even though members of Congress would love for her to speak at Congress, that has not happened, for example, because we feel that that's kind of a step too far towards recognizing her as the head of a sovereign state, which we do not right now. So it's a messy, delicate dance, and it's not something that our friends in Taiwan love, because who wants to be treated as a second-class citizen? But the truth of the matter is that functionally, Taiwan gets a whole lot more love than like 95% of the countries that we do actually recognize. The amount of engagement that we have, very senior people who are doing stuff with Taiwan, talking to Taiwan. This president has sent a cabinet member out to Taiwan, and that happens frequently. You could think of, we got like almost 200 countries in the world. They don't do that for every place. We have senior people who meet in other places, but just not here in Washington, and not so much in Taipei, up to a certain level. So it's kind of a little messy thing, but it's a real relationship. We talk, we have dialogues, we have exchanges. I've been fortunate in my last job. I love the job because you could meet all of these really great, important people. The vice president of Taiwan, we received him here in Washington, but that was before he was elected, or it was before he was inaugurated. So like sometimes we like skirt the, we skirt our self-imposed rules. But we have these rules in place because ultimately the United States' interest is peace in the cross-strait region. We truly do not pick a side. Taiwan can decide, you know what, we want to reunite with China, and the United States will accept that. What we cannot accept is Taiwan being forced to do one or the other. So it's clear that it has to be free of coercion. that's in the United States' interest. We certainly don't want a war or conflict in the Taiwan Strait, and so we also don't want to be the cause of that. So that is one of the reasons people, kind of criticize some of our policies about some of this contact policy I talked about. But we really do it because our goal is to, and it's not easy, and it's not something that, it's not always super clear, but our goal is to try to keep advancing our mutual interests and American interests with Taiwan as much as possible without triggering an unnecessary crisis from Beijing. It's not easy. It's not, if it was clear, it was in some rule book, then everybody would just follow it. But it's dynamic and it changes, and that means that sometimes we'll have to be a bit more direct in response to provocations from China. So what we have done is we routinely sent through the Taiwan Strait American what do you call it? Warships, because those are international waters, and the United States wants to ensure freedom of navigation. China has been blocking off huge parts of maritime areas and claiming it as their own, blocking out, there's like half a dozen countries in Southeast Asia that have maritime disputes with China. China has been literally building islands out of just the ocean to claim it as their own, because under international law, if you have, maritime law is crazy, but basically says, like, if there's a structure that you can build it, that you can claim that place as an actual space, and then so many miles around that. So they're doing that to kind of create facts on the ground, when in fact it's in contravention of existing maritime claims. So, part of what we do is we sail through international waters because international law says anybody can. And so we do that to re-emphasize the fact that these are international waters. Now we stay out of their side, we stay out of any other country's side, but we want to just make sure that we keep, we ensure the ability for freedom of navigation, which, most of us don't know it here, but that's a huge impact on just commerce. How you get all this stuff that you get at Walmart and Target and everywhere, a lot of that stuff is coming through these various sea lanes around the world. That is critical to protecting. Of course, it also can have an impact to our security as we, when we need to supply stuff in different places. But it's an ongoing thing. We consider Taiwan to be a force for good in the world, a democratic partner, and a democratic success story. And we want to continue to work with Taiwan. The way that this program came around was I was talking to my counterpart in Taiwan. Again, Taiwan doesn't have an embassy in Washington. They have TECRO, the Taiwan Economic and Cultural Representative Office, which is headed by a person with the title of ambassador, but they're called the representative officially by us. And this was in the spring, as the Black Lives Matter protests were breaking out. And they know I'm from Atlanta, they know my story, they know Morehouse, they know all this stuff. And he was saying, we're just scratching our heads. We're seeing this happening in America, and we're wondering, like, what can we do? How can we contribute? What difference can we make? And I said, well, look, I think it's critical that Americans have to understand Taiwan, China, and what you guys contribute. I said, but we still have these access issues. People don't have these opportunities. I said, but here's the thing. China often has, they give out scholarships, they do things with strings attached. I said, but we could really if you wanted to make a contribution, I think establishing something that helped build or expand a number of Black people that understood China, Taiwan issues, culture, history, that, if you guys can make this contribution to this real need for expanding access to Chinese language and culture, learning acquisition, that would be very helpful. And, we talked about something like this program, and at my farewell, they, announced that they were actually doing it. So it's a great thing. And I'm really glad that you guys are going to be a part of this initial cohort, which I think, we're going to look back on this years down the road as the beginning of something really, really special.
Yes.
So I'll stop there because I've talked way too much, but I'm happy to take any questions.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Thank you so much. Mr. Delk, you see the story. You will be the first cohort to go to Taiwan. We were started. So I feel very honored and really great honor to lead this first program, first group, and these are all good students. So now we open for questions. Okay, so Ke, the first one.
Okay, so seeing as you studied economics at Morehouse, I have a economic guided question. So what are the economic implications of the Belt and Road Initiative on Taiwan?
That's a real interesting question. So I'm sitting here in Pakistan, and Pakistan, China doesn't have like treaty allies. They don't do that, but Pakistan is the closest thing they have to one. And so the Belt and Road Initiative, the biggest examples are here in Pakistan. It's called CPEC, China. I can't remember CPEC, CPEC, and the Belt and Road Initiative. Here's one. Okay, what is the impact on Taiwan? Is a lot of what is sold under BRI, or whatever we want to call it, it has several names now, is not really exactly what it's as advertised, right? So China was like, we'll give you like basically the world, no strings attached. And then they get there and there's a whole bunch of strings attached. Often they haven't done feasibility studies, they haven't done all of these things. And so what that does is squeezes out other folks who probably were going to give them a better product. And a lot of times, like for instance, like, America they're talking about astronomical figures sometimes. And the data that we have shows that very seldom do they even approach anything close to what that number is. And a lot of the funding or financing that is given in lots of places is majority are loans. And then, pretty loans under not great terms. And so what happens is a lot of times it benefits a government in power at the time, because sometimes they will roll out, pretty quickly a road project, or, sometimes they build these stadiums, they build stuff like that. But by the time the check comes due, that government has moved on, or they're now involved in the business side of that and can benefit from that, or they're out before. I mean, I'm not kidding. In a lot of instances, like these roads crumble. A lot of these buildings kind of start because it's shoddy work. Another difference is it does not. These projects are not. These countries often are starving for jobs, and like they need infrastructure, they need jobs. Sometimes CPEC might address some of the infrastructure issues, but there really is a quality problem. And I'm not hating, but I mean, it's just like a fact. But the other point is China very often imports all the workers, imports a lot of the materials, from China. So a lot of these projects are really kind of like stimulus projects in China, in interior China, different provinces of China. So in a lot of countries, it's caused some real concern and unhappiness amongst the people, the local people, because what you're seeing is China is like they have these projects and people are building it, but there's no locals involved, almost no local labor involved. There's almost no local sourcing involved. So it's kind of like, China comes in, they bring everything in, and there's nothing really left for the people. There's no real benefit for the people. But it takes a while before some of that catches up. But we're still collecting some of that data. So I don't know if that exactly answers your direct question, but those are some of our concerns about BRI projects. Like, again, we welcome the theory, like, if China really is trying to get in the global infrastructure development game in a sustainable way, then we're all for it. But what we're seeing is that more often than not, they're saddling these countries with a higher debt load than they can manage for products that often are subpar or usually incomplete.
I cannot believe you are in Pakistan at this moment. I saw in
Yes,
Washington. So what time is there? Midnight.
it is midnight.
Oh, so much.
Dang, that's
Well, it's you. I'm jet lagged because I just arrived like 23 hours ago. I was back home on leave, so my body's all thrown off. So if I waited a day, I wouldn't have made it. I'm just
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
no, sure.
Yeah. Other people questions?
Oh, I do got a question.
Mhm.
So concerning about,
And if you don't mind giving me you guys your name and your name, where you're from, and your classification.
well, my name is Christopher Jackson. I'm a junior from Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
I've heard of it.
Mm.
So one thing that's interested me is like with the South China Sea situation, like terms of like ownership wise, and how China is saying like we own this. Is there any factor of using that way as to make sure to cut off any help that Taiwan needs internationally when it comes to getting international help or diplomacy?
Okay, so yeah, there's a couple of things in that. So China, okay, as far as blocking China, Taiwan out of international stuff, like China has been super duper aggressive about that. One of the ways that we see that most plainly is in the WHO, the World Health Organization. So at different times, China has been more permissive of Taiwan's membership or participation in international bodies. Under KMT administrations, generally speaking, Taiwan has been able to be a member of the World Health Organization and a couple others I can think of. Because of the deal that we cut to let China into groups like the World Trade Organization and APEC, China became a full member of those economic institutions. So they're not talking about countries; they're talking about economies. So Taiwan is a full member in APEC. So is Hong Kong. So is mainland China, in both the World Trade Organization and APEC. But in any UN organization, because China is a P5 member, a Security Council member, a permanent 5 member, not a Security Council, but permanent 5 member with veto power, they really, really, really spend a lot of time finding ways to screw Taiwan. I mean, in ways that are extremely creative, and we've never, because the U.S. isn't really, we're not that good in international organizations. Like, we're in some of the big ones, but China has folks in like all of these little organizations. Like there's like International Postal Union. There's one about, I mean, there's like anything you can think of. There is a small international organization that has something to do with it. And the Chinese are very focused on like changing minor language to exclude Taiwan. But it's really important that Taiwan is a part of these things. Why? Well, COVID. How in the world can you prevent fight back against a global disease if you leave out a piece of the globe? You can't. You're vulnerable. And so, and this particular issue, I feel pretty strongly. Taiwan is a global model in how to fight COVID effectively. My last trip to Taiwan was the first week of March. Now, at that time in the U.S., we were still just like, trying to get our heads around what COVID might be and what we're going to do and all of this. Taiwan was 3 months into the thing. They had everything locked down. To this day, I think Taiwan has had a total of 8 deaths and a few hundred infections. They did everything right as far as contact tracing, for most importantly, public information, uniformity of information, distribution of PPE, decisions about social distancing, schools, public accommodations, all of that stuff. And made it very clear and brought the whole public along. They took the case to the WHO back in like late December or early January, but they were rebuffed because of China's influence there. So like there's a lot of stuff that right now we're just all trying to survive this pandemic. Let's get to a vaccine. Let's get people in a better state. But there's going to be a reckoning that comes as we figure out all the things that went wrong. And one of those is Taiwan didn't have a seat at the table when they had information to share. Taiwan's president, Tsai Ing-wen, had been can't remember what job, but she was over like border security during the SARS thing. The vice president was the health minister. And then you have the CDC person. So these people had all been through this before. And so once they saw the first signs, they quickly jumped into action because they had the experience and the know-how to do that. And I think many of us would have benefited from that. I will just end with this. Taiwan was the largest donor of PPE, foreign donor of PPE to the United States. And I know that for a fact because we were helping, and they were delivering this to all 50 states, tribal nations, and U.S. territories at a point where, we were really, really struggling and in need. And, so Taiwan really is a friend of the United States when it counts. On the South China Sea. So the South China Sea is really bigger than like Taiwan, like Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, the Philippines, all of them have claims in the South China Sea area. In the last 10 years or so, China has very strategically like militarized the area. I mean, they literally have like built islands in contested areas and then posted military folks and facilities on those islands to strengthen their claim. They have lost some cases in arbitration, which they hate to do. They hate to go to any kind of international arbitration. They lost to the Philippines and they're still kvetching over that. But it is an issue. It is an issue. They paint back to 1,000-year-old maps, but then other folks have conflicting 1,000-year-old maps. I mean, so it's a really complicated issue. I'm not an expert in it, but I can tell you it's not something that's going to go away in the short term.
Okay. Other questions? Yes. Other questions? You also can ask him about how he become a diplomat. Some of you I know want to become a diplomat.
I have a question.
Okay.
How you doing? My name is Eric Pullian Jr., a junior from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I'm a marketing Mandarin double major. And I want to ask you about when you were talking about that being a full-time language student, you said. Like, how did you come upon that opportunity?
Oh, so it's kind of standard in the Foreign Service. So, Foreign Service says when you join, they say you're worldwide available, right? So they'll send you kind of wherever you're needed. I mean, you get some say. You get more say as you go along, but in the beginning you get none. But in any case, certain jobs have certain requirements for training, including language. And this, there's a school that the State Department runs called the Foreign Service Institute, which literally teaches 60-something languages full-time. And they're all native speakers who teach you. And that is your assignment for a period of time. So for instance, if you went from like zero Spanish to what we call professionally proficient Spanish, that's a 6-month full-time course. Full-time means every day. Okay, so in this course, in the average Morehouse College course, you have 3 hours of contact time a week. Is that right, Dr. Shen?
Yes.
Okay, so in these classes, you will have 5 contact hours a day. So that means, like every day is like a week and a half of regular kind of instructional time. Plus you have like other stuff you have to do. So you're able to accelerate that learning over time. And the classes are all small. So I would say the biggest class is like 4 people. And then, that second year of language, most classes was like 2 people. And then you got more and more one-on-ones as you went on. So there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. You just got to, you got to do it. You're always accountable because if not, why are you here? And that's your job. So, you just have to do it. Then there's lots of tools. The teachers are great. And you go through, there's so many in the Chinese program, you're lucky because it's a big program. So you have, folks from different regions, so you get different accents. You get different, types of language. People from different cultures. Like I had one teacher, she was Uyghur. I had a teacher who was Mongolian. Well, Inner Mongol, Nemang. You had, lots of Taiwanese. So you get that. Same thing like in Spanish. Oh, I'm sorry. So they have what they call world languages. So that's like Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese. That's 0 to the 3-3 level is what they call like professional and proficient. It goes like from 0 to 5. Like 0 is you don't know anything. If you know a couple words, you might get a 0 plus. If you can do some like hello, my name is type of stuff, you might get a 1. If you can do a little like basic conversation, it's probably a 2. I guess it's kind of maybe it's kind of like, I guess, how Morehouse has it, like a 200 course. Like if you're able to, converse at that level, or 300 course. But anyway, so, but to get up to that 3-3 is what is the target for most languages. If you do better than that, that's a whole nother story. But if a 3-3 is, you can go out and do your job, supposedly. So that's for the world languages, that's 6 months. Then you get like German or something, and that's like 8 or something. And Russian is like a year, or that's what they call hard language, like Russian, Thai, Vietnamese. But then they have super hard languages, and that's Mandarin, Cantonese,
Arabic, right?
Arabic, Korean. And that's 2 years. And that one is usually a year in Washington and then a year overseas. Although I think now for Korean that you might be able to do both years overseas, which is better if you can.
So did you learn traditional characters then in Taiwan, or how did they teach you?
Yeah, so when I started in at FSI, they know where you're going. So most of the people going to the mainland, they would give you. You can choose traditional, but most of us would choose, simplified. And so then when you get to Taipei, they also know where you're going. So, most of the materials they give you.
You're going to be going to the mainland, so.
Yeah. So the most of the materials they would get, like you could choose to do traditional. And because when you get down to the test, they're going to ask you, okay, do you want traditional? Do you want simplified? To live in Taiwan, you pick up a lot of stuff, and just because you got to drive, you got to do whatever.
Do you pick up any Minanhua?
Like paise, just like a bit of like Taiyu, just.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's a really cool thing. So when you guys get to Taiwan, if you just turn on the radio, it's so cool. They have these programs, and they'll say, okay, now we're gonna learn a couple of Hakka words. Okay, now we're gonna learn a couple of Taiyu words. But it's a very kind of multilingual place. Now I spent a week down in Kaohsiung, and I was like, whoa, like it was, Taiwanese was probably the major language there. Much less Mandarin was not like the average person was speaking. It's pretty cool.
And I guess a lot of students want to learn to follow your step to become a diplomat.
Well, I would love for you guys to do it. I highly, highly recommend it. We don't have enough. Listen, I really, truly believe that America's strategic advantage is our diversity. And it's not like just a line, but it truly is, to have people from many different cultures and backgrounds and faiths just gives us an advantage that most other countries don't have, because people have some different experiences, and the way you approach problems, or when you bring a group of people together to think through something, if you actually have people with different experiences, then sometimes something clicks. And you can really, I think, do well. I really encourage you guys, consider these fellowships. Go to careers.state.gov, and you can look up the Pickering Fellowship, the Wrangell Fellowship. Those are great opportunities because they paid for me to go to grad school. I went to Harvard Kennedy School. They paid for me to, I studied abroad for a semester in Dominican Republic. They paid for that. I had 2 internships. I did one in Washington. I did one in Madrid. that was, you know, fantastic. So you get all this, you get mentors. It's just a great opportunity to get in there as an apprentice. There's a lot of people, you know, who like, I didn't know, I found out about the Foreign Service only because because I was at Morehouse. I knew I wanted to do something international. I thought that the only way I could find a career where I could like learn languages and live overseas was in international business. So I said, well, let me go to I went to the Andrew Young Center. That was the first time Julius Coles was the director. And he told me about this fellowship. And we had like a little brochure with an eagle in a circle. And I was like, I don't know what that is. And so I kept, you know, I went on and asked about something else. And, you know, finally said, you need to really, really take a look at this. And I'm really glad that I did. And it's quite a few Morehouse men now in the Foreign Service. I got another guy who's here, and he's not in Islamabad, he's in Karachi, Cameron Thomas Shaw. He graduated in like 08, 09, something like that. And he served in Vietnam and Honduras, and he's going back to Vietnam after this. I have a friend, Jeremiah Knight, who was a year ahead of me, and he's now the deputy ambassador in the Marshall Islands, and he was just in Jamaica before that, and been in South Sudan and the DR twice and all kinds of places. Another Morehouse guy is about to be the head of our consulate in Casablanca, which is really cool. I mean, we literally have folks like all over the world. And, you know, a lot of us have learned languages we never would have thought about, go to places we never would have thought about. But it's a really great opportunity. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Is that Keen?
Yeah. So I'll introduce.
How do you pronounce your name?
Keen.
How do you
Keen, just like the word.
Oh, it is Keen. Okay, all right, got it.
Okay. So I'm Keen Tolman, junior, international relations and Chinese double major from Menifee, California. And so my next question is about the Foreign Service Officer Test. It is very hard. Do you have any recommendations for like test books or strategies that you used in order to do good on the Foreign Service Officer Test?
Okay. So first of all, I would say you guys are at a great advantage for the Foreign Service Officer Test. Why? Because you're in school now. And the Foreign Service Officer Test has just like a broad, so a liberal arts education is the best preparation for the Foreign Service Officer Test. It's a little bit of history, it's a little bit of economics, it's a little bit about like, you know, cultural studies, a little bit of math, a little bit of all that stuff. So seriously, like, you know, having a liberal arts education is your best bet. You can go on that same website I said, and, you know, they have like, you can order test booklets. Those are great because they're hard. I found them to be harder than the test. So that's a good study guide. We also have diplomats in residence, and they're supposed to be there to help you guys study for those and prepare for those tests. They are also should do like study sessions or prep sessions for the oral exam. It's kind of a 3-part exam now. So it's the one day is like just a test, which is a test. You sit down and, you know, you come back and you figure it out. You get the results sometime later. Then there's this kind of essay part. They call it the QEP, Quality Evaluative something. P, I don't know what the P is for. And it's basically a series of like 5 or 6 essay questions, which allows you to kind of like talk about your different experiences and how that might make you qualified. And part of it, frankly, that writing is important, guys. I'm just going to give this to you now. Like, writing is important, and it's going to continue to be important, period. All right. And then you have you pass that, then you're invited to take the oral exam, which is a 1-day, I mean, and it's like all day. You come in at 7:30, you're done in like 4. And it has like a group exercise part. It has a structured interview where like, so the group exercise, like you and I don't know, 4 or 5 people, and you have like a project and you all have a role, and then you have to like, you know, debate how you guys are going to move forward. Then you have like the one-on-one interview. And then part of that interview is they give you hypothetical situations to talk through. And then there is, again, a writing exercise, but this one is, they kind of give you a case to study, and then you have to like write up your proposal in time. And then you go in the waiting room and you find out if you made it right then. So now the good thing is, if you are a fellow, then they also help, you know, give you some study aids and test prep as well. Now, I will tell folks, like, having help is not a problem. Like let me tell you, if I leave y'all with anything, listen to this. You guys need to take every tool available to you to prepare for whatever it is that you're trying to do. And that is not a shortcut. That is not being taking a back door. That is what people do. Why? Because I know, for example, that Georgetown has one of the highest pass rates, but they also have people whose full-time job is to do nothing but to help people prepare for these exams full-time. And people, they've been doing it for 20 something years, so they're very good at it. And I know some of these people. So it's not a surprise that they do well. It's not by osmosis. People have other preparation and background. If you don't have that, you need to get that, which means you tap into what resources are available. And that's how you don't be shy about it. Don't be shy about asking for it.
That's wonderful. It's a wonderful advice. Also, like the scholarship, Mr. Delk just mentioned, I send everyone email. Please pay attention to my email. I do send you email about this information, scholarship information. You should apply. And like a Gilman scholar for your study abroad, Pinterest scholar for you become a diplomat. And we do have a diplomat residence program at Morehouse. Her office is next to me. So if you need help, come to my office or ask me to help, I connect you to them.
Yes, and you should guys, you feel free to reach out to me. And we're also organizing kind of a group of alumni who are in international affairs so that we can be a resource, because your professors have a lot on their plate. And we want to be a resource to help walk people through these things, because the same way, like, business majors have like a whole center that helps them go through their different stages, or pre-med students or law students, most careers do have, kind of certain key markers and, to help move you along. And we want to help guide you. And there's all kinds of, opportunities out there. Professor Levine, I think you had a question about language skills.
Oh yeah, just can that give you an advantage or not? It doesn't matter really at the time you take the test.
Oh, that's a good question. So the way it was at one point is, and actually this is where you guys come in, you're in a good spot. I'll have to do a little homework and make sure this is still the case. But Chinese is considered a critical language. And so when you finish that language, test, the written test, the oral test, they have a score, and there's like a cutoff score, determine if you passed or not. Okay, so then you pass that, you get that score, and then you go into a register, and they will go like rank order on the register as positions become available to call people up. If you say that you speak a critical language, and they'll do a little phone test to see if you can speak at a certain level, roughly, then they'll give you extra points, and so that can bump you up on that register. So it will pay for you guys to continue your Mandarin study. And then the other thing is, once you come in order to be tenured, you have to test out a language at a certain level in that language within your first 5 years, no more than 5 years. And so again, having a language. So when I came in, I went and I tested in Spanish, and I got out in Spanish like just right then. So that was one thing I didn't have to worry about. Whereas other folks, you might have to go get a language, and you gotta hope you do well and whatever. But so being able to come in with that also helps you on your tenure. And then for Mandarin, there's financial incentives. So if you speak at a certain level, when you're posted in the Mandarin speaking countries, then you can make extra money a year, like $10,000 a year. If you speak it very well, like $15,000 a year. So there's definitely a financial incentive.
That's wonderful.
Can I actually ask a question about that?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, how are you doing? My name is Miles Johnson, a senior physics major, Chinese studies minor from Charlotte, North Carolina. And I did want to ask about the test out aspect of the language that you discussed.
Yeah.
So when you say you can test out for it right then, like you did with Spanish, how, I guess I would say, like, is the test or way that they see if you're good enough to test out just as hard as the exam itself, or is it just separate from that? How does that work?
Oh, no. You have to take the exam, period. So I'm saying, like, you can say, hey, I would like to take this. I speak this language. I would like to test in this language. Everybody's going to go through the same type of language test. Like, whatever language it is that you do, it's administered by, certain of the faculty in that department. So if you say, okay, I would like to test in Mandarin, then you go take the Mandarin test. Now, you either will reach that level or you won't. So I'm saying, like, if you reach the level, like, you test it out for tenure purposes. But your goal is to test as high as you can. All right, so I told you it goes like 1 to 5, 1 in speaking and in reading. So a 3-3 is kind of like professional proficiency. A 4-4 is like an educated native speaker or something like that. It was a little higher. 5-5 is like, I don't know. I mean, like, Dr. Shin would have that in Mandarin, but the rest of us would never. And like many Chinese people would probably not have like a 5-5, I don't think. But if you get a 4-4, you get a 3, whatever your score is good for 5 years. And I mean, that goes into other stuff. Like, for instance, like, I'm going to Shanghai next. So before they could, make my assignment official, because it has a language requirement, I had to test again. So if I didn't test, then they couldn't. If I didn't get that score, then I couldn't go, for example. So you want to keep that score up. But if you ever get to the 4-4 level, then that score is good for the rest of your career. Again, very few people get to that level, unless they're like, a native speaker, or I don't know, or you spend a lot of time in those countries. So anyway, but you can do it.
Yeah.
They for Mandarin, they do have, for some people, select people, they'll give what they call a beyond 3 year. So this is like after you tested a 3-3, you go and you served in the place. Now you're about to go do another Chinese speaking tour. In special cases, they will allow you to study for another year, to get you to a higher level. So in my group, it was like 20 of us that were in Taiwan, and 1 or 2 of them were in the Beyond 3 course. This one guy, he had a PhD in like, Sino-Soviet relations, and he had done his Mormon mission in Taiwan years ago. And, so he wasn't just starting from zero like I had.
But I have a feedback question.
Okay, Sebastian.
So my name's Sebastian Gordon. I'm a freshman, and I'm from Washington, D.C. But,
I've heard of it. Wait a minute, where are you from?
Southwest, Waterfront, Ward 6.
Okay, so he's actually not lying. Okay, good.
Nah, I'm from D.C. Yeah, for real. I'm not from Maryland, Virginia. But
hey, D.C., same.
Yes, sir. But I was just trying to piggyback off of Miles' question. Like, if you go in and like you're automatically at three level, or you're at 3 or above, does that mean you don't have to take any of the classes? Like, you can go straight to work?
Yeah. And if not, I mean, a lot of times it's you take those tests. When you first come in, they want people, like, if you have any language, they want you to take the test early, like when you first get there, because they're gonna place all of you in a place, and they need to know, like, this job is going to open up at a certain point. So they need to work backwards and see, okay, if we don't have anybody who has this language, do we have enough time for them to get the language, for example? So it's kind of that's why you do it early, and that it plays into it later on. But yeah, for sure, you want to if you got it, I would say, like, try to test, and then you can still get more if the timing works out. If you have time between when you're finishing what you're doing and before you have to start the next thing, then they can give you a language.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Other people? And if you don't have other questions, we will let Mr. Delk rest. It's midnight there, and this is just great, And could you leave your email there so students can reach you? Could you
Sure.
type your email I read notes of what you talk, and so students can see and chat. So you can put your email there. Wonderful, wonderful. And I deeply appreciate. I'm just so thrilled you are here, and I think.
No, thank you, and again, thank you for all the great work that you're doing to build this program, which again was completely non-existent when I was there. But I'm so glad that you and Professor Levine have, really just
See, we
built
have
this program.
Chloe is here too. Chloe, we have 3 faculty now. Yeah, Chloe.
Oh, really? Oh, great. That's even better. Are they here now?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chloe.
Oh, hey, how are you?
Hello.
Good, excellent. Oh, well, you guys got a whole crew now. That's great.
Exactly. And we know you're coming, so we all are here.
Excellent.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, this is really fantastic. I'm so glad that Morehouse is doing that. I'm so glad that we have the benefit of such excellent faculty and such committed students, because that really makes all the difference. And you guys are really at the forefront of the future. All of this stuff I talked about, the bottom line is, China and the United States, we're in this for the long run. We're going to be working this thing out forever. We're both here to stay. I think there's lots of great opportunities. I would love for you all to join the Foreign Service, but I know that's not for everybody. But I think whatever your chosen profession is, there's always like a China angle to it. There's always something that you can do. And even if you don't, what you pick up just by going, exploring another culture, learning something different, seeing something new, you never know what that'll spark in you, what ideas that might bring. So I really hope you guys, you'll love Taiwan. First of all, you'll eat well. Please enjoy some xiaolong bao for me. It's going to be fantastic. Some of the nicest, most hospitable people I've ever met in my life, in Taiwan. And it's it's so modern but still maintains, the ancient, the traditional Chinese culture. In my opinion, Taiwan has the most well-preserved traditional Chinese culture of Greater China.
I agree.
Because it was not destroyed during the Cultural Revolution.
That's right.
So you will just see, even as you're going to the average grocery store, in front of the grocery store, when they're opening up, they will, they will light the incense in the shrine. They will do, so you see temples are ubiquitous. It's really a fascinating, open place. Hope you get to go to a hot springs or two while you're there. Take the fast train somewhere. It's just really a cool place.
Yes. So thank you so much. Let's give an applause to thank him, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
I did take a photo I will send to you. So
okay, great.
And also I asked school cannot really have any honor, but we will send you some.
No.
I will send you.
No. Oh, thank you. Oh, very.
Morehouse teacher.
I always love Morehouse swag. So that.
Well, thank you so much. I hope see you again. See you soon. When you come back, please come here. Come to Morehouse.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, and you guys stay safe.
You too.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, that's a wonderful talk. Let's take a break. Everyone can stretch a little bit, and then we come back to discuss, okay? All right, let's give ourselves about 5 minutes to 10 minutes. 5 minutes. We don't have much time. All right, relax.
曾老师，
Mm-hmm.
你要不要我下个星期准备一些文学的东西
We don't have time.
Okay, so that's good.
We do not have time.
Yeah, that's
The
good.
reason why, yes, you see, every day we have different topics. Today we focus on society. Yesterday history we didn't finish.
Right. No, I was just wondering. That's fine. I just wondered. If you want-
Tomorrow we should get into look at my topic. Each day we have a topic.
Right.
And we usually have wonderful discussion. Students good. And
Good.
tomorrow, let's see, we are actually getting into political system. But because of Fred's coming, we will not have time to do.
Okay.
Political system is important. See, this we understand.
Right.
So each
Good.
day we have a topic, and maybe even the end.
Yeah, just let
But
me know.
tomorrow, Fred will also called homecoming home 的乡土 homeland literature.
Native soil. They say native soil. Yeah.
But it's also called homeland 乡土文学 yeah. homeland literature. We have that in our documentary film, but we haven't touched upon it.
Oh, okay. Well, if he's gonna talk about it, yeah.
I have that. I already gave student the discussion question.
Okay,
We don't
good.
have time to prepare, but today we will get there a little bit.
Okay, great.
We'll
Great.
see. Then let me see this, and then we will talk about.
Yeah, 不用。
See next week. This is a short
对，
time.
就算了，就是不用，我就是问你一下，就是问一下，没有
If
必
you
要。
want to talk about your private experience, personal experience, that would be good.
Okay, yeah, I could do that.
Like what you do with the
Yeah.
Literature.
Yeah, if Fred will talk about it too, that's fine. That's
Yeah,
good.
and then Deborah Sun will come to talk about film EE. You know, Deborah's native.
Oh,
Ma-
Deborah, Shay,
Deborah.
Deborah. Oh, wow, great.
Yeah, she's so famous. Someone Chinese study. She's one of the most famous
Yeah.
right now.
When is she talking?
She's Friday. Friday she's coming.
Great. Okay.
So this week we have 3 speakers. And
Right.
next week the student will be speakers. They start doing their research.
Good.
They already claimed the research topic. So the whole weekend they have to study and do the research presentation paper.
Right.
And
Great.
next week we'll finish. But I really I appreciate you offering this.
Yeah, just let me know. 随便.
Mhm.
Okay. 我去休息一下。
休息一下，我也觉得是有一点累。Stand up, everyone. Is Li Xueliu drinking wine or a beer?
No, I'm just drinking good old water. And I just spilled some on my mouse pad.
Yeah, Leo. What's in the cup?
What's in the cup?
Hey, pass me some, dog.
Okay, I don't know about all that.
Hey, man.
I could use some water.
Look, I just turned 21 in July, so I can drink legally.
Word?
Good for you, bro.
Good for you.
I turned 21 November this year.
Yo, I turned 20 in November this year, dude.
Yo, that's crazy.
I feel like an old man since you said that.
Yeah. It be like that. Yo, how it feel to be 21?
Man, overrated.
Yeah.
That's how I felt when I turned 18.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I don't feel any different.
Like the only
Yeah.
good thing happened, like since I turned 21, is I was able to get my own car. That's really the
that's
only
tough.
good thing.
I got my own car when I was like, what, 17, 18?
I'm telling
Yeah,
you.
I got a car, but I don't have a license, so I can't drive it.
Leo, you still don't have a license. You've had all quarantine to get a license, and you still don't have one.
It's backed up. I swear.
Leo,
No.
let me
Leo,
check this,
Leo,
right?
I had to get my license transferred from Illinois because I still had my Chicago license to Texas. In the time during quarantine, I have gotten a new license, and you still don't
I
have.
check it. I so like the DMV in DC, it's like backed up. Like backed up. Like when I tried to get a reservation in what was it? In like June, it was backed up till December. And I didn't do it because I didn't want to wait that long. And now I gotta wait even longer.
Yeah,
Leo,
now
let me tell
it's
you-
January, and you still haven't done it.
Leo, let me tell you this, right? I didn't have my license, right? Beginning of quarantine. So my governor literally said if you're like above 18 and you have 60 hours of driving on the paper, you get your license.
What?
Yep. I didn't have to do the road test or anything. I just turned in the paper, got my license.
What's funny is that in Chicago, I walked into the DMV when I turned 16. I was like, my mom and I walked into the DMV. We said, "Oh yeah, sorry, we lost the paper." But here's my learner's permit. All right, dope, you're 16. And then they gave me a
There you go.
license.
Oh, wow.
It was just that simple.
No wonder Americans are bad drivers, man.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know about all that.
I mean, Northerners.
I was gonna say Chicago driving is definitely better than what I've experienced down here in Texas. If
Yeah,
I'm being
nah, people in
honest.
Virginia don't care about their lives. They be cutting people off. I swear.
Bro, I When I first moved down here to Texas, I was so blown, dude. Because I'm driving on the highway, like from the airport to my house, and the speed limit is 65, and I see somebody zooming going like
Yeah.
100 to 105. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Like, yo,
all right, bro.
calm down. Where do you got to be going that fast to?
Bro, I was so mad. I'm like, what are you doing?
Bro, I can't wait to go to bring my car down to Atlanta though.
Bro, and they had the nerve to honk at me because I was going too slow. I'm like, all right.
Well, how fast
Like,
were you going though? Were you
I was
going,
going.
like just 65?
I'm going like no. I'm going like 80
on the right lane or the far left?
and on the left.
Oh, see, that's your mistake. You need to go 80 on the right lane.
Bro,
Okay,
stop talking league.
I was gonna say, but people in the right lane are actually going the speed limit like they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's not my fault that some idiot decides to start zooming at like 100 plus on the freeway.
Hey, might as well make it like Germany, because Germany doesn't have any speed limits on the highway.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how my grandfather got in 3 accidents in Germany.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Hey, yo.
It's very interesting because my sister's been driving longer than me, and she's been in like what 3-4 accidents. I still haven't been in one yet, luckily enough.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, you just don't jinx yourself,
Don't
dog.
jinx yourself.
Yeah, bro, you're gonna get him one. You're gonna be like, can't make it to class today, guys. Got in an accident. Sorry.
Yeah. Next week when I go in for my doctor's appointment again, yeah. So it was a doctor's appointment, but now I'm in surgery.
Yeah. Don't jinx it.
No, please.
Yeah, no, I knocked on wood, but
good.
So let's start. Anyone can summarize the delicate situation between China, United States, and Taiwan?
Well, I guess it's kind of like the United States is like, hey, we want to help you, but then China's like, yo, but they're like us. So stop that.
It's like so many conflicting interests, because financially speaking, with the businesses with America, like they want to be like more for the China side, but then Taiwan's been through with us through World War II and all like that craziness. So it's like trying to balance both different interests at the same exact time.
It's really so delicate, the situation. I feel like anything you do is you keep the balance. Then how to make the balance, because do we want to keep the status quo just like what it is? Do we want to support independence that cause war possible? Or if we don't, what would we do? So we talk about this at the beginning of the class. We read that the article, also Pompeo's decision. And yesterday, when I tried to prepare this class, I encountered a wonderful talk, 15 minutes. It's comments on Pompeo's policy. And he was supposed to visit Taiwan, but canceled. The reason why Taiwan, when all the world decided to decline to receive him this week. So he cannot go anywhere. He's kind of mad, I guess. Because everyone thinks that he's trying to do something to for incoming Biden administration. He was planning to visit Taiwan several places. Now all the world refused him. So he stuck here, but still, these last few days still make extremely important decision for the future. So last night, what I watched is Kevin Rudd. Anyone heard about Kevin Rudd? Never heard of it? And you will know him in the future. This is Kevin Rudd. He was Australian Prime Minister. His Chinese is like a native. He studied at Beijing University for a few years. He became a premier in Australia, but he's not current. He was a previous prime minister. Right now, he just elected as the chairman of Asian Society, which is the biggest scholarly association or body. So yesterday, he gave comments on Trump administration's policy. Remember, I talked at the beginning of the first class, I talked about this Pompeo's policy. And I am conflicting myself. Actually. Sometimes I feel like America should be more strong. We cannot let China get away from all this stealing intellectual property. All this, China has been a crying baby all the time. Every time at the beginning they said, oh, we will abide by international laws or regulations. At the beginning they said, oh, we don't know, we are a developing country, we don't know how to do it. But now after 20 some years, they get into the WTO, which is under the Clinton administration. And they, like what Mr. Delk said, every time American business want to go to China, China will say, oh, you have to work with us. We have a conjuncture, we have together. Then they steal all the way of administrated. They steal intellectual property, steal all the technology, and then they say, you go, we don't need you anymore. So this is cause us. America has this sincere will to go there to do business. Also has been last 40 years. There was one school, we call them a panda school. Why is a panda? Panda hold everyone, hug. The panda school is that we should support China all the time. Let's not offend them. And they will, if middle class emerge, become stronger, they will go to, just like Taiwan, democratic road. But it turned out they didn't. It didn't happen. Last 40 years, Americans spent billions of dollars to support China's so-called election experiment. In the village level, they said, oh, that's why China we're getting from a town level, county level, state level, provincial level, country level. Never happened, only stuck in the village level. Even now, it's gone. There's no election anymore. So everything that Panda School has tried to do failed. So Trump administration came, said, no, we cannot do that anymore. Let's be strong. Let's be tough. So Trump has been a tough guy. You all know that. Pretend to be a tough guy. Tough and China. And the reason why the tough China was good to know sometimes as a Chinese scholar, I think it's good. I feel we need to show our teeth. Otherwise, they feel Americans just can be deceived. Oh, you're American. Chinese people have this concept. Americans are so easy to fool them. They don't even understand China. They are so cunning. They go to the talk table. They say something. They use all the rhetoric, but they don't mean it. CCP never mean it. So Trump administration made it very clear. We need to differentiate CCP and Chinese people. CCP, the Communist Party, is different from Chinese people. So look at when I type, I never say China, I say the CCP. We need to see CCP as a group of people. They took over China. They had the power. They really, the Chinese people have no right, have no iota of right to participate in the government. CCP control everything. So Trump, in my view, did one thing correct, differentiate these two things. We cannot mix the CCP with Chinese people. So we need to make very clear. Second, they are taking a tough position, saying that you cannot always fool us. You think that you can say all these good words rhetorically, so ambiguous, we don't know how to interpret it. No, we know what you want. CCP as a communist leadership, before Deng Xiaoping time, they downplayed ideological differences. But now Xi Jinping is very tough. Xi Jinping, I believe Xi Jinping does not like Tsai Ing-wen, the president of Taiwan, because Tsai Ing-wen is a woman. Xi Jinping, when he became the leader, he said, oh, in the Soviet Union, no one is a man. Because he felt the collapse of Soviet Union is because Gorbachev, Yeltsin, everyone, they were not men. He will be the man to carry the communists in the whole world. So he despises women. Look at that. He doesn't want to engage with Tsai Ing-wen. No iota of this, despite Tsai Ing-wen all the time. And even rumors, Tsai Ing-wen is a single woman, never married. And I see Chinese wife said, oh, she's gay, and so on and so forth. Demonize her, so many things. So Trump administration really take a tough position. There's several advisors for Pompeo. One is Mao Xu, which was my colleague at the Naval Academy. I know him. I cannot claim that we are friends, but we will talk in the past, always discuss Chinese situation. So he was very, I feel that he really knows what's going on in China. But because the Biden administration is coming, of course, in the United States, you don't have the policy continue. You don't have to continue the policy. Every time you change the president, you change the policy. We need you to become expert. We need young people to understand China, to have a consistent policy towards China. See that? But however, do I really trust the Trump administration? Not really either, because I don't trust Trump. I guess most of us, we don't. He's a liar or a charlatan. How he has a policy? He doesn't even have an ideology. He does not believe any religion. He's just a charlatan. But China's policy maybe is a little different. So yesterday, after I listened to Kevin Rudd, I feel like giving another perspective. So I want to show that 15 minutes interview. Okay, let's watch it. What did he talk about? I think it's a wonderful perspective. Let me share the screen.
Okay, so I have a cancel policy around dissent.
Okay. Please. What the policy I said?
There we go. It's here.
Whose question? I didn't get it. Whose question?
I was going to say I couldn't see it, but then it popped up.
Yeah, okay, here. Can you see it? Everyone see it?
Mm-hmm.
President and CEO of the Asia Society, also, of course, formerly the Prime Minister of Australia, joining us live from down in the Sunshine Coast. Mr. Rudd, great to see you. Belated Happy New Year, and hope you're continuing to keep safe down that side. In terms of this whole thing with Taiwan and what Mike Pompeo did, Shri, I think, came up with a great analogy and also imagery. This is akin to sort of an army leaving a city, but leaving in mind as it beats a hasty retreat. Does that sound fair to you?
I think on occasions such as this, it's really important to go back to first principles. What's the first principle here? It's called the One China policy. I know it may sound a little old-fashioned, but it's on that basis that diplomatic normalization occurred between Beijing and Washington back in 1979. And became the basis of discussions, in fact, between the Kissinger visit to China in 1971 and eventual diplomatic normalization 8 years later. So what does that mean in practice? It means that official level contact between the United States and other foreign governments and the United Nations and the government of the Republic of China and Taiwan should stop, and that the sole representative of China be the People's Republic of China based on the government in Beijing. Now, the reason I go back to these fundamental principles is that that has been the mainstay of strategic stability for the last 40 years or so. If the United States now, in the death knell of the Trump administration, is about to upend the One China policy by saying that all forms of official communication between the international community and the government of the United States and the international machinery like the UN and Taipei is now possible and to be encouraged, I think we need to understand that we are moving to the end of the One China policy. And what's that mean for markets? What does that mean for the international community? It means a new period of real strategic instability, given this is a fundamental item of faith in Beijing.
So you backtrack through history. 79, the Relations Act. Then just before the close of the year, the Taiwan Assurance Act as well. You know, you're talking about the risks involved here. Do you think that the incoming Biden administration is going to go so far or as far as to explicitly guarantee U.S. protection, U.S. coming to the aid of Taiwan if indeed it does come under attack or perhaps even invasion from China? Or would that be not just a step too far, but would that literally be considered by China as almost a declaration of war?
I think it's important to understand what are Mike Pompeo's motivations right now. What Pompeo is doing is laying a whole series of landmines for the incoming Biden administration. And what he's doing is, in fact, to paraphrase the analogy with the Carthaginian Wars of the 2nd and 3rd centuries BC, is salting the earth in the US-China relationship in general and laying landmines on Taiwan in particular. And the politics of it is this, to ensure that any change to any of those hardline positions put in at 1 minute to midnight by Pompeo and his team, if those changes are embraced by the Biden administration, then Pompeo will be free to attack Biden, attack the administration as having gone soft on Beijing, and become accommodation at Beijing's security concerns for the next 4 years, because Pompeo himself wishes to be a candidate for the 2024 Republican nomination. I don't think that's the right way to conduct the national security policy of the United States of America. Because, and the reason I can say that in my judgment is that I come from a country which is a close ally of the United States. It's just irresponsible. On the second part of your question, which is what will the Biden administration do? I do not see the Biden administration adopting a new policy of explicit military support for Taiwan. The long-standing tradition between administrations of both colorations, Republican and Democrat in Taiwan, has been strategic ambiguity. That is, to cause sufficient doubt in Taipei, not to cause the Taiwanese to embrace any reckless policies like a unilateral declaration of independence on the assumption that America would immediately send in the 5th Cavalry and defend Taiwan, while at the same time, ambiguity in Beijing's strategic calculus, that if Beijing was to assume that the United States would never act under any military scenario involving a mainland military action against Taiwan, that assumption by the Chinese would be severely misplaced. So in other words, that's the strategic ambiguity up until now. I don't see that as changing.
Kevin, we will probably see the customary responses of outrage from Beijing after these pronouncements from Secretary Pompeo. But do you think broadly the leadership in Beijing does understand that these actions from Pompeo are the last gasps of a twilight administration, and Biden will adopt a more pragmatic, if not nuanced approach to resetting relations?
I think it is really important to understand the fundamental importance which the Chinese Communist Party attaches to all Taiwan policy-related matters. This is the holy grail of internal Chinese Communist Party politics. It's the unresolved question in the Communist Party's mind from the 1949 revolution. It's not just like anything else which may become a problem in the US-China relationship. This is front and center, the #1 national security and political concern on the part of the Chinese Communist Party. And the reason I say that is we can't just assume that they'll all sit back, pull out a Panda cigarette and sort of relax in their armchairs with their antimacassars and a cup of Chinese tea and say, well, that's just American politics at play. I wish I could assure everybody that's the case, but I'm not necessarily of that view. I think we could be in for some serious instability in the week to 10 days ahead. And remember, in internal Chinese politics, there are also many fault lines. And no one wishes to be seen to be weak on Taiwan when you have such a direct provocation, such as we've just seen now from Pompeo.
Kevin, very interesting comments there, and we will continue to talk about the potential for both the US and China to be on that collision course that you warned about later on in the program. Let's go back to former Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd. And Kevin, we left off talking about Taiwan. When you consider the military balance in the region, in the immediate vicinity, and the fact that we have hardware almost nose to nose in disputed maritime regions as well, how high would you rate the risk of a military miscalculation?
It's impossible to produce a precise mathematical formula for this, but there are questions of probability which are along these lines. The more you concentrate military hardware, either assets in the air or assets on the high seas, the greater the probability that sooner or later one's going to run into the other. And that is also been particularly applicable in the South China Sea, which is a different set of scenarios again. So my general answer to your question is we don't know. Secondly, however, the intensity of the deployments makes it more probable than in the past. Thirdly, there are still professionals within the two militaries who are dedicated to the task of avoiding conflict by accident, that is, and then crisis and conflict and even the outbreak of hostilities by accident. But here is the overall point. The political insulation factor, the diplomatic insulation factor is getting thinner and thinner and thinner. And that makes it progressively more dangerous, because you're then left to this very narrow band of mill-to-mill communications to stop stupid things from happening. Once you strip the politics, the political and diplomatic, as it were, cladding away. And that's where we've got to in the US-China relationship over Taiwan, particularly with this most recent move.
How would you characterize the relationship, Kevin, between your country and China? Because some might say that bilateral relations, whether it is diplomatic or commercial, are at the lowest since the Stern-Hu incident over 10 years ago, I think it was. Is there any kind of diplomatic off-ramp to this situation?
Well, I was Prime Minister when we had the Stern-Hu event, and that was about our determination to ensure the protection of the civil and legal rights of an Australian citizen of Chinese origin currently before the Chinese courts and legal system, for which we make no apology in retrospect. We will always protect our own, whatever the ethnicity of the Australian citizen concerned. I think in the overall scheme of things, as someone who began life as an Australian career diplomat in the early 80s, now 40 years ago, and the diplomatic normalization having occurred between Beijing and Australia in 1972, this is the lowest point the Australia-China bilateral relationship has ever reached since diplomatic normalization nearly half a century ago. There are multiple contributing factors to it, both on the Chinese side and the Australian side, but I think all reasonable people would want there to be some level of structural improvement. And certainly what I have argued is that as the Chinese look to how they may restabilize the relationship with Washington in the period ahead under the Biden administration after the 20th of January, then a core element of that, I believe, would be for the United States to insist that such restabilization also include China's relationship with America's principal allies, Australia, Canada, and other countries as well.
So, Mr. Rudd, you were referring to a thinner and thinner diplomatic buffer happening, and this harks back to your experience as a career diplomat. When you take a look at the team lineup and you know, the starting five for the incoming Biden administration at the State Department, the number two and the number three makes one think that his priority is going to be Iran more than anything else, certainly more than China, because the top China person he seems to have lined up would be the new USTR, Catherine Tai. Would that be a good read, or am I off the mark?
I think with respect, my friend, that's off the mark. I actually I kind of know these folks relatively well. And the person who will hold the China file in this administration is Jake Sullivan, the incoming National Security Advisor. His number one politico-bureaucratic partner in this will be, of course, Tony Blinken, the incoming Secretary of State. Both of these individuals are well experienced on China. Both of them understand the complexity of the US-China relationship intimately. And both of them will hit the ground running in terms of a recalibration of various elements of US strategy towards China. So I think in terms of the career experience of various others in the administration, yes, Europe remains important. Yes, the Atlantic Theatre remains important. Yes, the Middle East and CENTCOM remains important. But China, if you look at the core composition of this administration, will be the number one strategic priority. And you don't have to go much past the language deployed by President Biden during the election campaign and since the election campaign to underscore the importance attached to those two career appointments. These are highly significant and China literate and China focused individuals.
Okay, that's good to know. And yeah, and well noted. Mr. Before we get to Team Biden, though, in the inauguration, the remaining, 10 odd days or so, I mean, there have been more than a couple of memes on social media describing the fact that, I mean, look, you've got social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc., cutting off Trump's access to his supporters and to the people. That's one thing, but, it's a little like, trying to shut the barn after the horse has already bolted. And more to the point, this is a man that, Twitter or not, Facebook or not, etc., this is a man who still holds the nuclear codes. I mean, this is sensationalist, but it is true. In the 10 days left, how much no good can, maybe not the president himself, but his supporters get up to?
Well, I think most American friends and allies, in which category I count myself, have been deeply concerned by developments in Washington, not just on the 6th of January, when you saw the storming of the United States Congress building, but also the attempts between the election, prior to the election, and continuing to this day to delegitimize the outcome of the voice of the American people expressed through the presidential election process. Why does that matter at one level? Because those of us who belong to liberal democracies around the world, in Europe and in Asia, think of democracies in the Republic of Korea, in Japan, think of democracies in the Philippines, think of democracies in Australia, India, across Europe, and across the developing world as well. When you have a country which describes itself as the oldest continuing democracy, that's the United States, see events like this unfold, it causes a shuddering effect across the rest of the world. That's at a political level. At a national security level, you are right to say that there are real concerns being reflected by allies of the United States about the stability of this president in his remaining 10 days in office. I noticed that the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, has sought assurances from the Pentagon concerning our access to, shall we say, executive decision-making on questions of America's nuclear arsenal. I think most friends and allies of the United States are gratified that the Speaker of the House.
Okay, so I guess this is really Trump, not really to China that much. Any comments for this? I didn't know that. I think this is a different perspective about Pompeo, the whole was a minefield for Trump administration. So I think that is, for me, it's shocking to think about it. Also, this one child, Mr. Delk talked about one child, one China policy and one China principle are different. And if we abandon one child, one China policy, that will really make the whole situation imbalance. And that the effect, long effect, will remain to be seen. Any comments?
really delicate situation, really delicate.
Yeah.
Looking at the other side of seeing like with not having Pompeo like from coming over to Taiwan and the other areas, but like at the same exact time, like things are still like you have to actively keep doing something because of how like things could boil over which way.
It is delicate. If we don't study, we normally don't pay attention to see that.
Oh, yeah.
We don't even know what's going on. Why they do that? Even me, I feel like because this class, it forced me to read about it, think about, trying to find information about. So I am learning too with you together about this. And China is really there's even no debatable. If China have any intention to declare independence, Chinese army will go there within hours. And China, you know how small Taiwan is. It cannot resist at all. Now what do United States do? How do you protect Taiwan? Okay, Ricardo?
I have a question for somebody, since you said that you were like raised on the idea that Taiwan like is part of China. Now, older, do you believe that if they had the ability to, like, not with, if they weren't going to be attacked, like if they were able to protect themselves from China, would you say they should declare independence?
They would not have ability. It's too small. There's no way they have enough military power. When I was in Taiwan, I was meeting Taiwan military officials, and I asked the question, I said, if the mainland invaded you, what would you do? They will surrender. We cannot resist.
Yeah,
some military officer also said that why we fight? We are all Chinese. If that's what they want, give to them. But that is one side. So most people, like our book argued, is that you remember yesterday first question asked how many Taiwanese live in China. It's not how many Chinese live in Taiwan. How many? 1 to 3 million people. Taiwan total have 23 million people. 3 million people already moved to China. Unification is not the issue anymore. But if we force it, artificially create it, that will create the war. See that? We need to let history, just let future generation deal with it. Let's keep the status quo. That's my idea. Let's do it just very gingerly, very cautiously. So we keep the peace there. We read the article. It's one of the most important technology centers in the world. We need to keep it like that way. But if there anything happen, everything will be just collapse. And Chinese Communist Party will never allow Taiwan to be independent. There's even no question. Okay, Mark?
Do you think, Sure, that in light of China's increasing encroachment in Hong Kong and the way they've effectively shut down, dissent, that emboldens them even more with Taiwan, or not really? Does that make them?
Not actually threaten Taiwan. Taiwan is scared.
Of course. So does that make it more likely, you think, that they will take unilateral action? Or do you think the U.S. can be a diplomat? In other words, have a moderating impact? Or will they not look at the U.S. now at all for influence?
They do. That's why Tsai Ing-wen is the first person in the whole world called Trump when Trump elected. And Trump even called her, and they have a conversation because Taiwan so depends on the United States.
Right.
And they protect her. So if we abandon that, I hope we don't. You don't. When you become an advisor for the president of policy, don't abandon Taiwan.
Right.
Taiwan need protection. Taiwan need the United States to keep China away.
But my question is, if they don't listen to us with regard to Hong Kong, why would they listen more with regard to Taiwan? Especially, they're so strong. Xi Jinping wants to really have a domination. I think Xi Jinping is he's really interested in dominating East Asia, right? So why would he listen to the U.S.?
Oh, because U.S. has a military. U.S. Pacific Fleet there. They are still afraid. We have how many carrier? We have United States have 10 or 8, 10.
I think we got 13 now.
China only have 2, so there's still military power. America still military power, and especially recently, We sell so many weapons, missiles.
Yeah.
So it's not really protect Taiwan. It's just threaten China, say you cannot do it. If you attack Taiwan, we'll attack you.
Right.
But really, America will attack China? No way.
Yeah.
They just keep the balance. Try to just make everything peace.
Right.
Peace. If today's peace, tomorrow's peace, the day after tomorrow still peace. We have a peace.
Yeah.
If someday and maybe Xi Jinping will die. I hope so. Let's pray together.
Stop that.
He can die soon. Probably China will be better. Is that right?
张雨绮啦，沈老师。
Oh, 沈老师, Zoom is a Chinese company. Please don't say that.
Oh, it's okay. I wish CCP. We can destroy CCP. Count me in. I can imagine. The only thing if I regret, I will say if in my lifetime CCP didn't clap, I would not even have a rest soul. My soul would not rest.
Oh my goodness.
I want true. Every day at home, I said, oh, I want to do something to destroy CCP. I'm too far away, but I want to help you to understand how dangerous CCP is. The CCP is the most dangerous force in the whole world. If we have, as long as we have CCP, the world will not have a permanent peace. We have to somehow destroy CCP, make China a democratic country. China could be a why Ma Zhenglong is smiling, think that I'm too crazy. I'm a little bit crazy about that.
I hear you all the way. That's deep.
Since I was young, I was a political.
That resonated.
Anyway, okay, good. So now we talk about Taiwan a little. We don't have much time. The film we haven't finished, but we already get the gist. Yeah. So I do want to talk about the Aboriginal people, how they live a life. Based on our reading, there's a unique customers. What is most unique for Aboriginal people?
The most original custom.
Yeah.
The beheading, the head hunting.
Head hunting. You see that? And,
yeah, that was crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's
There's too much of that in the movie.
Yeah.
Well,
I love doing that.
But that actually is make us aware of. Otherwise, even when we talk about it, you don't even think about it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Look at the film. That's really strikingly there. Okay. Kewei.
I was gonna say the headhunting and the fact that it's tied to like a blood sacrifice and it was tied to the Rainbow Bridge. So like it wasn't just needless headhunting or needless cannibalism like we see in some other tribes in like the Amazon and such, where it's just sort of like needless headhunting. It's actually got a purpose to it. And I like how, because I actually ended up finishing the movie Chen Lao Shi. I found it for free. I ended up finishing the movie.
Oh my God! Everyone for free.
Yeah, I ended up bootlegging it, but it was very hard.
Yeah,
It was very hard. It took me like 2 hours to do, but I ended up finishing the movie. But what I really liked was the fact that that this was all tied, and it was sort of like them liberating themselves, and it was them gaining back their self-determination that they had. And this theme of like self-determination and liberation is what is seen throughout Taiwan. So like it kind of like everybody in Taiwan, the Aborigines in the film are seeking self-liberation and seeking self-determination. And we see right now in Taiwan, the nation as a whole is trying to seek its own sovereignty as a nation state, trying to seek that self-determination, seek that same liberation that we see throughout this movie. And so I think that movie paints that very, very well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's a really good point. I do feel that way too. I feel it's actually reflect what the Taiwanese people feel their own identity and culture and country. There's two kinds of Aboriginals. Generally speaking, one is high mountains, one is land. This is a high mountain area. Mm-hmm.
What? Because I was reading something because it was talking about how, I don't want to say this wrong. I'm going to say this wrong. I feel bad. Hakka, yeah, Hakka. How, well, like they like went to Taiwan and like have their own like farmlands and stuff like that. The natives there would hunt those Hakka's heads and consider it as like prime trophies in the Manthorpe reading.
Oh, okay.
So it was interesting reading that as well, showing like how they act towards like different people coming into their area.
What do they believe religiously? What do they believe, Aboriginal people?
Animism.
They believe in the practice of animism, the nature worship.
Okay, nature worship. What else? Remember, the father descended from, I don't know.
They believe in ancestral worship.
Ancestral worship.
Really part of it, major part of it.
And they believe that that's tied to like their success in like farming or hunting or whatever.
Yes, their ancestors protect them, so there's ancestors. So this part. Second question I want to talk about is that today Daniel also mentioned 228 228. I asked you to do the quiz. It seemed like not all of you really did it. You didn't read about
The quiz yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday quiz.
Yeah.
Explain the cause of and the aftermath. What the result?
They said aftermath?
The cause and the result. So what is Anyone know
February 28th, I forgot what year, but they killed
1947.
1947. They killed the police, the Taiwanese police killed a woman because she was selling illegal cigarettes.
Yeah, why did they do that? Why did they kill a woman? What's the other bigger background? What's happening there?
So,
okay.
Yeah. So it was kind of like the roiling point of a lot of tensions that have been arising. I mean, you had the nationalist police forces who, had come back from China, not had come back, but who came to Taiwan, and were basically, trying to say like, y'all are a colony, like y'all are part of us, even though obviously like we know what happened had just gone down with like Japan's rule, and we're basically trying to say that, as well as we're treating them as if they were like traitors for not fighting back harder against the Japanese. And they, on top of that, they also, so I'm trying to get my facts right. They were just generally like not treating them that well, and also like a lot of the Taiwanese people were kind of saying that they were backwards, that they were dirty, and that they really were oppressing them to the same extent, if not more, than Japan was doing when they were occupying them. And so that day really boiled over into like a clash between the two. Really, like, it's kind of symbolic of the clash between Taiwan and the mainland in general. And not only was a woman killed, but an angry mob, I remember, formed thereafter. And when the nationalist police decided to fire into the crowd, they ended up killing 4 more Taiwanese. And it just really commemorated like that symbolic division between the two populations.
Symbolic, but at the moment, how did the Taiwanese people see the mainlanders? 1947, the mainlanders were arriving at Taiwan. How do they see them? Taiwanese people perceive the mainlanders
Dirty, backwards, not as technologically advanced.
Like the really savages.
They felt that they were more traditional than they thought they were, because the mainlanders thought they were traditional, but then the Taiwanese and the people that were there were like, we're actually way more traditional than you, keeping the like ancestry from ancient China. We use that more than you, sort of.
There is a really interesting different perception. That's right. One is that Taiwan has been under 50 years Japanization. Taiwan is more like a little Japan. There was like what Daniel mentioned, Japanese Navy were there. So they built up Taiwan industrially, hygiene, everything, solar system, everything. So Taiwan enjoyed relatively high living standard. And the mainlanders from Kuomintang, they all are retreat from the civil war with the Communist Party. They were absolutely defeated. They were even their clothes are ragged and they look terrible. They didn't know bicycle. Remember the story about the bicycle? They even don't know what the bicycle for because they're poor peasants. They're just the army soldiers. So Taiwanese perceive At the beginning, they were really happy. They want to reunite with China. And finally, the Japanese left. They are so happy. When they came, they said, oh, what is this? So they have all these different perception. Mainlanders perceive Taiwanese, oh, you under the Japanese rule become a Japanese. And we fought 8 years with Japan. And now you love Japan. You like to be Japanese. You speak, most people only speak Japanese. 50 years Japanese education, people don't remember their language. So you see, they cannot even speak the same language. Even the mayor, Chen Yi, which is appointed by Chiang Kai-shek, he could speak Taiwanese, Japanese, and Chinese. He refused to speak Taiwanese and Japanese to them. He only speaks Chinese, Mandarin Chinese. The Taiwanese people have no clue what he's talking about. You see that? They don't understand each other. So that's one small issue. The woman was killed. And then a lot of Taiwanese people just want to attack the mainlanders. And of course, mainlanders is the government. They have more power, police or the military. They killed that day, February 28th, they killed more than 10,000 Taiwanese. So the blood is everywhere. And so many people were killed. And then that's the reason why Taiwan announced the martial law. And the martial law lasts 38 years. And it's so important for Taiwan. Without understanding martial law, you don't understand how Taiwan was ruled or governed. So that's the reason why the martial law started. The result, the effect is martial law is announced. So Taiwan, since then, under the white terror. You cannot read books, even by writers in mainland China. If you read a book from mainland China, jail. So many people put in the jail. Writers, you cannot say anything, put in jail. So this is called the white terror until 1964. Think about it. It's almost more than a decade and a half. So this is the start of the martial law. That's what I want to get, the R28. And when we go to Taiwan, we will visit Taiwan, the R28 Park, Memorial Park now. So because this is such an issue, no one is allowed to talk about it. When Taiwan started, at the beginning, it's not really democratic system yet. When the beginning, when the forces push the democratic direction, writers, filmmakers start voice R28. They want to talk about it. So I want to show, do I have time? I do have time. There's a film called A City of Sadness by Hou Xiaoxian. It's a wonderful film. I want to show the trailer that you see how at the beginning people want to talk about R28. Then we, of course, that let's push so I have some okay, here. Okay, let me share the screen. Notice here, 小上海, Little Shanghai. This is after Japanese already defeated. So Taiwanese people are very happy. They want to connect to the mainland China. They even call
I'm not sure. Oh, I didn't interrupt. My apologies.
Okay.
Oh, I wanted to ask quickly when and how, what was it dictated where people would write Hanzi from right to left instead of left to right, and when did that change? Do you know?
54 in mainland China. Let's do it. Which film?
A story of four brothers, separated by war, haunted by violence, pursued by gun. Watch as the Lin family struggles through Taiwan's dramatic social change. Survival is at stake.
The movie, when I came to the United States, early 90s, and the movie was just released. And I remember the first time I watched the movie, I was sitting there crying. Crying. By then, R was still not was still forbidden to talk about it. But then after the Li Denghui, the president, so R became a Memorial Day for for Taiwan. Now February 28th is a holiday for everyone. The government apologized to everyone and gave the economic financial compensation to every family. And now there's in the center of Taipei, there is a park, and we will go to visit. It's a part of the Taiwanese people against the brutality of the police and the government. It's really worth watching. So that's the important event. And another my question is Jiang Jingguo, Taiwan, the son of Chiang Kai-shek. I said, give me 3 things he did for Taiwan. And tell me what you write. 3 things Jiang Jingguo did for Taiwan. He's too important. He's beloved by everyone. What did he do?
I have to get my list up again, but I'm pretty sure he did like actual reform. I think there was some. Oh no. What he did was he made it so that the phone calls. He made the government. He enforced that they have to pick up the phone for individuals in society so they can actually call in and say, "Oh, hello, I'm having this problem," and so he was like, answer their calls, please answer their calls and provide them with some sort of relief for that.
Accountable and responsible. Okay, so that's the story. Yes, he changed the government in many ways. What other thing the major contribution to Taiwan society? Other people, everyone wrote it. I need to ask other people who don't talk. Ethan, you talk.
He created an anti-corruption campaign, or he launched one.
All right, that's one of the things. They want to make a government.
Yeah.
Government has been always corrupted, but he started all the time very severe punishment. So he also
Didn't he execute one of the leaders?
His relatives, his family will not participate in politics.
Yeah.
My family, he said, no one will get into politics. He said a good example. Okay, Jabari?
He executed the leader, right? One of the corrupt leaders in public to gain trust.
Yes. But the major contribution, this is all small compared to his contribution to history. This is a small thing. I need a
Also,
bigger thing.
he also recruited Taiwanese into the actual government that had been mainlander run and like Chinese run, because when the mainlanders came over, the whole government was Chinese run. It was mainlander run because they were government officials prior and they were soldiers prior, the majority of them. So those were the majority of people who took roles. And so he dismantled that and let Taiwanese people come into the government in the 1970s because they are people, they need representation as well. And so he gave them that representation.
He also made the vice president a Taiwanese. Li Denghui is a Taiwanese, a vice president. See that? That's one of the things. Okay, Ricardo?
Wasn't he the one that officially ended the martial law?
That's right. Ended martial law. He did. After 38 years of martial law, he ended martial law. That is really important thing he did. Okay, other things. Other things. Okay, please.
Didn't he create or broker one of the like U.S.
Kasai first. Kasai.
I said, didn't he broker like one of the first major U.S. Taiwan like defense treaties or agreements or something like that?
He was there 1960, but he was there, yes. But that is the most. Well, I want to see how he changed the history of Taiwan. You know, this is even bigger than a one treaty or something. It is important treaty. Like the treaty, we are still using it. I put it on my reference there. Okay, so please.
I guess like overall, his whole like leadership was a push for like democratization.
Yes.
And a new way of life for the Taiwanese people.
See that is his major contribution in the history. In his leadership, Taiwan is transforming from a dictatorship to a democratic country. So today's democracy is based on Jiang Jingguo's creation. He was the president. He could be there forever, but he said, let's end it. Let's end it. So, under his leadership, Taiwan started having election. Today, Daniel mentioned that before all the parliament member was elected in 1948, 40 years never changed. Under his Jiang Jingguo's leadership, they abolished all these things, re-elected everyone. The new generation coming into politics. So Jiang Jingguo is the really founder of democracy in Taiwan. So he is a really great person. People love him. So we will go to visit his father, Chiang Kai-shek, Memorial too in Taiwan. But also we cannot forget that his contribution. Chiang Kai-shek actually was a dictator, just like Mao Zedong, the same way. But his son changed China. So that's what I really want to get. Martial law, democracy, this major thing. Other things, yes. Other things, yes, he did that. That's so many things he did. But the major contribution is transform Taiwan from a dictatorship or not a democratic country into a democratic system. Of course, in many years, in almost 50 years, I think back and forth, a lot of fighting, but gradually, they build up. It's quite a mature democracy now. That's what I want to get. And so yesterday we finished lesson chapter 3 about culture, culture. And please send your reading notes to me. So I want to check how you answer the questions. You don't need to write long, but put keywords. And I will check the keywords and all your reading notes. Tomorrow we have a quiz on base chapter 3 and chapter 4. Okay? All right. And we didn't have time to continue our film. We have 10 minutes. Do you continue one? Because this is another day. We can, otherwise the money is wasted. We didn't have to watch it. You want to continue the movie or do you want to? Oh my God, I forgot. I put everyone. I put a short story. We have 5 minutes. There's a short story I sent to everyone called Dead Again. It's a very short story. Maybe we should read it here. Then you don't need to read it by yourself. Everyone open your email. I send you the story. We finish reading this story. Then we're done today. Keep reading the book, chapter 4. This is our textbook. We will go back and talk about it again. Open your short story called Dead Again. Everyone have it?
I have it.
Okay.
I have it.
Kobe have it. Ricardo have it.
Yep, I got it.
All right, everyone have it. So who like to read the first paragraph?
I'll read it.
Okay.
It was not an illness. The doctor says the old tree's roots were shot and there was nothing you can do about it. They all knew that villagers hate the idea of dying away from home. Time was the enemy now. So the ambulance rushed her back up the mountain while there was still breath in her body.
Okay. The next person, Alicia Liu.
我没有这个是where do you find it?
Email. I sent the email.
Okay.
Okay, Ricardo. Second paragraph.
89-year-old Fen Yang.
Fen Yang.
Fen Yang was the oldest living member of the Xie family, its matriarch. Back home, she hung on for a day and a night, as if waiting for all her relatives to come home. She had already outlasted the hospital's prediction. Not everyone in the family was able to get home, but 48 of them, young and old, managed to make the trip from all over the island. A rare occurrence, since for years, many of them had found excuses to stay away from the mountain village and the ancestral rites, even over the New Year's holiday. This time, some had come home mainly to look over land they could soon expect to inherit. Family members living abroad could not take the trip, but were contacted by telephone.
Okay, next one. Puli.
We're atop a pile, correct?
Atop a pile.
Yeah, atop a pile of hempen funeral clothes that had been ready to lay other items in a bright red. Since she was a great-grandmother with 5 generations, instead of 4, it would be as much a celebration as a funeral. No wonder the atmosphere felt different. The grief felt by Yang Kun, her youngest son, and her 6 married daughters was lessened by the mood of the rest of the family. There was hardly any sense of loss. Taking advantage of this unique reunion, some of the returnees passed the time beneath the family's camphor tree, while the youngest walked out beyond the bamboo grove to enjoy the scenery and take pictures. Yang Kun ran his legs off, seeing to the needs of the visiting kin, taking time out every so often to go inside to see how his mother was doing. On this latest check, he drew the curtain back and could not believe his eyes. Fen Yang said she was hungry. Shocked by the news, everyone ran into the room and huddled around the bed.
Okay, so Madelon.
Okay. Early the next morning, just before sunup, even though Fen Yang was still weak and needed support to get around, she lit incense
You're on the wrong side. The way the book reads, it's the latest check.
Oh, well, my bad. I zoomed in.
It's after she asked. Like, yeah, it's right there.
Yeah. Okay. After she asked to help her sit up, she was thrilled to see all the sons and grandsons at her side. Has everyone eaten? She asked, eliciting an outburst of laughter. They were happy, of course, but could not help the feeling that there was something comic about the situation.
Continue.
Her son wanted to see if...
Continue.
Yeah, her son wanted to see if she knew who they were. Who am I? You're Yakun, the fool. Everybody knows that. They roared with laughter. Then the question resumed. Every time she got the name, or the family ranking right, she was rewarded with applause and laughter. But more than half of the gathered family went unidentified, even with a little coaching.
Okay, so
One of her great
Jabari, next you.
One of her great-grandchildren was pushed up close and immediately burst into tears. I want to go home, he said in Mandarin. I don't want to stay here. What did he say? Finying asked. I didn't understand a word, but then she chastised herself on having so many children and berated herself for getting old and losing her memory.
Okay, so Miles, next one. We cannot hear you.
Hello?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can you hear?
Uh-huh.
Okay. That night, all the visitors left, some by car, others on the last train out of town, more than one with kids complaining about the mosquito bites they were taking home from the mountain. On the day before, the old family dog, true to form, had raised howls of warning to the hordes of clamoring strangers, scaring the hell out of the small children, which earned him a whipping from his master. How was he supposed to know that they were the master's kinfolk? Now he hid out in the bamboo until the last sign of invasion had disappeared. When he returned home, wagging his tail. Even then, he was unsettled and confused as he looked up at his master, who returned the look, appearing to have forgotten what had happened the day before. He got up and turned off the TV, cutting the mountain family in its bamboo grove off from the rest of the world.
Okay, next person would like to Sebastian.
Early the next morning, just before sunup,
No, no.
even though Fun Young was, I'm at the right part, right?
Yes.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Fun Young was too weak and needed support to get around, she lit incense to the gods and ancestors. Then she sat in her rattan chair in the living room, feeling remorse over a lack of energy to go into the kitchen and make tea as an offering to the gods. She was thinking about what had happened yesterday. It was yesterday, wasn't it? She wasn't sure, but she knew for certain that her family, adults and children, all had come back to the mountain. It was an exciting thought, and if it hadn't actually happened, at the very least, she knew she dreamed it. So she thought.
Okay, who like to do next one?
I can go.
Okay.
Not finding his mother in her room, Yan Kun rushed into the living room and was surprised to see her there. Mother, he cried as he walked up to her. Go make some tea, she said. I lit incense to the gods and ancestors, but couldn't make them any tea. I told them everybody came home and asked them to protect everyone, help them make lots of money, and let the kids grow up quickly to attend college. Yan Kun stepped onto a bench to straighten the sticks of incense in the two burners. Mother, he said, please don't climb around anymore. Let me take care of the incense. With a look at the red-checked and octagonal tables, he found it hard to believe that his frail mother had actually managed to put sticks of incense into the burners. Continue or?
Do anyone
Okay.
want to continue or anyone want to do it? Okay,
I can.
Logo. Mm-hmm.
I told the gods and ancestors that the whole family came home. We just said that. Oh, she already forgotten. While Yang Kun was making tea, Fen Yang relaxed in her chair, hands on the armrest, a smile on her face, as she gazed at the images of the Guan Yin, Bodhisattva, the goddess of the sea Mazu, and the earth god. She watched the tips of burning incense, which, like her own life, emitted a red halo in the darkening space. A sandalwood fragrance slowly filled the room as curling smoke began to seep outside, where it filtered into the hazy morning light. Keep going.
Yeah, who next one who like to do? Kasai, do you want to do it?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Less than 2 weeks later, Fen Yang again slipped into a coma and was rushed back to the hospital, where the doctors, while amazed over her step back from the brink of death, nonetheless urged them to take her home without delay if she had any hopes of dying there. Once again, she hung on at home. The doctor who accompanied her in the ambulance checked her pulse, listened to her heart, and looked into her eyes with a flashlight. It won't be long now, he said. Yen Kun sent someone on a motorbike to fetch his daughter from school. She called all their relatives, but most insisted on talking to Young Kun himself.
Okay, next person would like to do it? Ricardo?
Will it be the last? Will it be like the last time? Speaking as her son, I hope so. Young Kun said. But the doctor said, and I could see for myself that heaven won't listen to me this time. When the person on the other end hemmed and hawed, Young Kun continued, "You're her paternal grandson, and your father's no longer around, so you have to come back. When you all came home last time, she was so happy, she talked about it for days." You want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep doing.
That was pretty much how every conversation went with those who insisted on talking to Young Kun personally. They wanted him to know how hard it would be to make another trip home, but were not willing to come right out and say it. As a result, 6 of her daughters, themselves on in years, came home and did 3 of her, and so as did 3 of her surviving sons. Few of the grandchildren, paternal or maternal, made the trip, and none of the grandchildren who their mothers said were so young they had to stay home to take care of them.
Okay, next, I could only one paragraph. Kewei, you're such a good reader.
Okay.
Mhm.
The last paragraph. So it's next time, correct?
No, another day.
Oh, another day. Yeah, I kind of locked me out of here. Okay, another day and night passed. And Yankun, who assured himself that she had neither a pulse nor a heartbeat, invited a Taoist priest over to perform the rites. But the gongs and drums had barely begun to sound when the Taoist noticed what a corner of the shroud had slipped to the floor and that the body was lying on its side. He shouted to Yankun to come look, and when Fenyang saw her son, she told him she was hungry. They fell all over themselves, removing the sacrificial water in the bowl to be smashed upon her death. The sand-filled incense burner, as well as the spirit money and the Taoist altar behind her. 19 or 20 of the family members passing time under the camphor tree went inside and stood around Fenyang, who sat up with help and looked into their doubt-filled faces. Apologetically, she said, "I'm sorry you all had to make another trip for nothing. But I did leave you. I went there and I saw your grandfather, who said this is the 7th month, a bad month, and asked me what I thought I was doing, as proof that she really made the trip to the netherworld." Fenyang continued, "I also ran into Granny Arui, who said her roof was leaking badly, which is why her grandson was born with the hair lip. The looks on the faces around her were unalloyed, befuddlement. Next time," she said anxiously, as if taking a vow, "next time I'm really leaving. Next time, the final next time was barely audible." She was obviously embarrassed. A weak smile appeared on her face, and she said nothing more.
So a story about culture change, tradition dying, and family relationship, and religious belief. So tomorrow we will have a guest lecturer, guest professor talk about this short story. Okay. All right. Any questions? Too much study?
Shanlao, sure. So I kind of already wrote the paper for Sadiq Ballet. So can I
Okay.
send that to you?
That's fine. If anyone, I really want you to watch it. Oh, I don't know what to do. Watch the film to read the paper. Should I give you my YouTube account? 就是沈老师 at Morehouse. 沈老师
No, you shouldn't. I'll be able to watch it offline.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Let me see if I can find the free one.
The free one, there's no English subtitle.
Let me try.
I did.
Kane, how'd you do it, Kane?
Hey, bruh. It took me 2 hours. I had to do some source code and some different shit. It was crazy. It was crazy just to get to it.
You can watch the film, finish the film. You can please write the paper. Just your response. What do you think of the film? I want to see your direct response. I want to respond paper 2 pages. Most of the 2 pages don't write too long. Okay.
Okay.
If you cannot find the film, if you want to use my account, I will give you my account. I just don't know how to give you my password. I don't want to give it because it's my Gmail. I have a lot of
Really?
secrets. I have too
Well,
many secrets. I don't.
what I might do, if I could find it, I'll let y'all know on the Morehouse Discord, and I could just share a screen and we can all watch it. If I can find it, a free one.
I bet.
All right.
Somebody put the name in the chat, please.
Oh, okay.
I got booted, so I lost all the chat.
No.
Oh, no. They automatically change. So that Sadiq.
In English, it's like the Rainbow Warriors. Then it says Sadiq Ballet. That's in English. Like it's got like the
Warriors of Rainbow.
Warriors of Rainbow.
Go.
All right. 找朋友 together.
找到一个好朋友，冰格里，我说你是我的好朋友，再见。
Yeah, see you tomorrow.
明天见。
明天见。
再见。
再见。
Can I talk to you after everybody leaves?
Yes. Okay. Ricardo, you can talk to three of them. We will have a meeting like today.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna ask. I didn't do so well in the quiz yesterday. Is there anything I can do for extra credit?
It's okay. I guess I told everyone. I said we will drop the lowest grade for the quiz. Okay.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, because all right. Thank you.
I don't know my way. I want you to read it carefully. You have to really read it.
Yeah, I was trying to. It's a lot because I'm back in Atlanta, so I'm like on my own, and I also have to balance because I'm back in Atlanta for baseball, so the season's like getting ready to start and stuff like that.
I see. Okay, because I didn't read ask you to read the second book, only one chapter, second book, but the first book is a textbook. Really, I will send on the reading questions. People, when you read it, please make notes and send me back the notes. I want to see the notes. Okay, people already sent it.
Okay, so try to take
the notes. In that way, I know you read it. It's also.
Oh, I sent the notes. For last night's.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Okay.
That's in your email.
Yeah, that's okay.
All right, 谢谢.
Don't worry about it. Okay. 好，再见。Oh, 3 hours class is really long. But I'm so glad Daniel came today. See that? Yeah.
That speaker will help a lot.
Yeah, I think it was good how like you had different activities throughout, you know.
Yeah, we learned Chinese too. Not today we didn't have time. Every day I give them. I wrote a paragraph about Taiwan in simplified character, then change into a traditional character. Then we read traditional character. We have about 20 minutes exercise. It's good. Actually, it's a really good class. If every class like that, I enjoy teaching so much. Going back to teach. That's it.
Yay.
So much discussion actually is good too. Today not that much actually because the lecture a little bit too long. That's good. So our study abroad program. Can we do it or not? Taiwan will be postponed to the winter. There's no way we can go to. Taiwan is banned any foreigner enter the country from January 1st.
Wow. So there will be no Taiwan trip in the summer then?
No.
Yeah.
So mainland trip, would you both?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it. I mean, I feel like if people have their vaccinations, it should be okay, but you know, it depends on China. Like if China has some example, you know, how will they allow people to come in without having the quarantine? If it's 2-week quarantine, it's going to be too much, I feel like. I don't know. What do you think?
The vaccine, you know, we all have the vaccine, then it's not going to be a problem, I think.
But if they make us quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel room, it's too much for the students.
Yeah, but for right now, we still have the quarantine, but maybe to the summer, everything's going to be better.
Right.
But I feel very positive about everything, so don't take my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic also, but how many students want to do that, do you think? Would have enough students?
We haven't started yet. We haven't started yet. So my idea is maybe we just postpone to the winter program or not.
I don't know. Beijing in the winter, so cold.
That's right. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. Not going. Winter's not-
Taiwan is good in the winter. Taiwan.
So that's I postponed to December.
Taiwan is a little bit raining though, but it's okay. It's damp, but not cold.
Beijing is gonna be too windy in winter.
Too cold.
Like it's too cold.
So no, okay, we don't go. Because May is approaching very fast. It's really fast. If we don't organize now, it's just another year don't have a program. But if we do, there's so many unpredictable possibilities. You know, we just don't know. If one student gets sick, everyone have to quarantine. It's so much work.
Gosh.
Oh yeah, I have a thing I need your help. Because I need to change my passport. They need like a notice that I have to change my passport. You know, I have some, you know, like study abroad. I have to, you know, use my passport to travel something. Then they allow me to change my passport. 大使馆真不是东西。
It's okay. We can give you an invitation to talk about it. That's fine. That's what But how about our program? We still have to make a decision.
I mean, I don't know. I know some students are applying for Middlebury. I don't know if they want to. I mean, I have 3 students who are applying. I don't know if they really want to go.
Well, Zoe is accepted by Middlebury.
Who?
Joey. Oh, he's in 101 class.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I have 3 people from 201 are applying, like Li Shui Liu, Ethan and Ishan, and then what's his name? He's a first year. Dalton Fevers. What's his Chinese name? I forgot his Chinese name. Fu something. What about the other programs at Morehouse? Are they planning to go ahead with it or not?
We are waiting for the school called the emergency management team to make a decision for the whole school. But actually, it really depends on professor, the program director. If they do it, they do it.
Yeah.
They don't. But my idea, my Taiwan program definitely will be postponed. I don't think that in May will be. I don't want to go there like a South African program. They want to do in August. August in Taiwan, the weather is so terrible. It's so hot.
Right.
I want to go.
Really hot.
Yeah. So I prefer December. It doesn't matter. Anyway.
Did Spelman cancel all their programs for the summer? I heard
They did.
So maybe, I don't know, just maybe the parents, how do you think the parents would feel also? That's, they might feel like it's too much.
I would suggest to cancel, but I also feel bad. Then 2 years don't have a program.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the minimum amount of students that you would have a program? 5, 6?
6 at least.
6.
We will have 6 students.
Well, then you could probably do it. I mean, if everyone has their vaccine, and like.
The point is, you know, about the Chinese government. They
Right.
will make a decision, even though you have a vaccine, you still have to quarantine for 2 weeks. They can't do that for everyone, you know, try to go to China. Yeah. They still don't know.
No, let's not do it. 何必太累了，其实手太。
Quarantine.
觉得很累，不想做。
I think
我不想工作，我觉得太累了。
maybe we can do like
因为是你们2个人做，if I in the Taiwan program, you both have to recruit or do everything. I'm not going to do anything.
what about doing like intensive something at Morehouse? Like
Okay, so there's another story. It's a Heilongjiang University where I have an online study abroad. And for our students, tuition is free of charge.
Wow.
So we need to promote that. Yesterday they sent email to me, and I said I will discuss with you both. So this is second thing. Second is how what they do. Their class started March 1st, and in the middle of June. And the class, I said the only possibility for us is the class before midnight. they can take a class like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and that's done. Because there's a time difference. And they agree, they say all the class, if I was doing there, all the class were arranged in the middle, like early morning class, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock class. A student can take 4 courses there.
But starting in March or in
March 1st, yeah.
But how would students do that while they're still at Morehouse?
Exactly, that's what I think. Well, I think it is. What do you think? I think we were like a good student, like a Curry, John Curry. Those good students take a class there, extra class, 2 classes, and give them credit.
Yeah, maybe just take 1 or 2, whatever that fits their schedule.
So in that way, they can have really the native speaker there help them.
Right.
And if the summer is okay, they can go to Hainan University.
Nice.
Summer program. What do you think of that?
That'll be for me. 可以啊。
It's okay.
What is the summer program at Heilongjiang? Is they have a separate program in the summer?
现在没有，现在没有。就是如果他们选课，他们选完了，他们已经对黑龙江的老师知道，老师也认识老师。
对。
黑龙江中国也开放了，他们可以去黑龙江，我们不必都到一个地方。
对 ，OK。他们可以自己去，我们
自己去，或我们也可以。如果我们有5个学生、6个学生，老师带着，你带着找这个去黑龙江，可能去北京。我去台湾，咱们就可以这样做，对不对？对，好吧，所以咱们要跟学生说，哪个学生，我也不知道是谁，我还没想，我觉得特别累，因为这个课，的 reading， 他们需要 reading question，so I have to read it carefully, give them question. I've been so busy actually.
这边咱们先准备着吧，就是按照所有的都开放了来准备。如果不行的话，咱们either推到冬天，或者说再 cancel 1年。
那也行，那咱们就是说得现在就开始工作了。
因为中国对他们应该3月他们会做，是不是政府会决定怎么做？3月还是4月？
中国政府现在非常严，现在因为中国好几个地方都出现了疫情，中国严极了。中国有
100，石家庄有100个 positive COVID case， 已经封了整个河北省。
哇，
中国特别严格，封了，中国也封了 ，crazy。我觉得还是美国这样好，知道吗？谁愿意死谁死，谁愿意出去吃饭，他们吃饭，他们年轻，他们不怕，我们害怕，我在家里待着。
就是智商检测，人民智商检测。
那咱们就得开始，如果咱们觉得还是 continue 的话，就得开始做学生的 recruitment，要开始 recruit student， 开始要召集学生。对呀，所以还有我也不知道咱们开学怎么办，开学是你们怎么？反正我是不想去学校，我觉得很害怕，我就是打了预防。
你就老实跟家待着吧，你什么时候能打疫苗了，什么时候去吧。
打疫苗我也不想去，我觉得他们有人打了疫苗还得病呢，我不想去，我觉得好害怕。
没有说，他们还没有通知我们什么课要怎么说，谁要去。怎么说？面对面教课，谁要上网教课？他们什么时候要做决定？
你自己决定，不是他们决定。
是吗？
决定，对呀。
那也要看学生来不来。如果我们的学生大部分的学生还没有回来，那
不，他们1月25号就都进校了，这还有几天，2个星期都回来了。
学生都回来。
1200个学生回来。
102的都回来 ，OK。
不，1200
个学生，1200个学生都回来。
1200 ，OK。
回来1200，所以你愿意上网课，你就开始你要准备网课和 hybrid。像那个李老师，你的101恐怕既要上网课，也要上这个什么
hybrid 课。
你要有网课有 hybrid。我可不上课，我只是听课。I will just listen. I'm not going to teach.
Fine.
我的课就全那啥了， 我全那个 on campus。
你全 on campus，OK。但是你的2年级不见得人人都在那个 campus。
没关系，我这边到时候那啥呗，不在的让同学谁关系好弄个 FaceTime。
OK。
我就这么整了，因为我这台电脑现在已经支撑不起来多人的网课了，太卡了。
怎么了？你那新电脑给你新电脑会卡？
我这个新电脑，因为它没有办法，就很麻烦去 update 这些东西，然后导致我的新电脑现在也是卡的一个状态。可能是 Zoom 的事，我不知道。没关系，我回上课，这都不是事儿。
你要每天回。
你要是回去上课，是不是因为你跟 Mark switch 啊？因为你101的学生都在freshman all come back return。
我 freshman 都可以回去吗
？freshman 都回来了，所以那要么跟李老师换过来了再，你怎么办？
我都可以，我都可以。要不这样，哎，这样行不行？所有的 on campus 课我来教，然后到时候 online 的课换成李老师。
因为你现在有问题，那就是要准备好多课呀。你想101、201都要做，太累了。那你们俩就换回来，我去上那个换回来很容易。你要不然就克洛伊，你愿意 campus， 你们怎么愿意做？
你说202的学生谁回 campus？
那不知道，202的学生不见得，freshman all come back。
你可以问我，你要不要我给他们？我可以给他们 email， 我问他们，你们谁要回来？
要不然我们都写个信好不好？给学生都写个信，问问谁回来谁不回来。因为实在不行就谁 Chloe 那么愿意去学校，那就1年102的学生都上学校是很重要的，就面对面的肯定。
我愿意去，可是我不愿意去每节课去。
你也是50岁了，不行。
对，李老师也在家待着吧。
你别
我难道我也老了吗？
你不老，你不老，只
是40岁的人也有那什么的。
我知道了。我妈妈已经有这个 vaccination，我没有。OK，so我会发那个201的学生问谁回来，谁不回来。
那行，你现在马上给写，今天就写信，好不好？
我现在给他们写信，问他们。
对。
这1年级学生是 require 他们都回来是吧？
都回来了 ，freshman 都回来，因为他们都不想在家待着，都想回来。他们都不想在家，他们说哎，
因为他们喜欢 Chloe 教课，所以202的学生，如果我还继续教202，Chloe 应该给他们一对，或者1对1，他们会比较开心的。
开心不是，主要是如果是 freshman， 我跟你讲，他们都想回来。这个至少我知道什么202的超龙什么也都回来了。
OK。
202有好多学生都回来，他们实在想回来，他们就不想那个在家待着。
他们都要回来，他们
都要回来，就是他们都恨不得都回来，他们谁都不想在家待着。
OK。
只有我想在家待着，我可不想去学校。
如果在家待着和爸妈在一起 ，mental health 会出问题的，一直在一起。
mental health。OK。
哎，还有这边我上102、202哪个都行，因为我现在在准备202的东西，所以如果说需要换的话，我再换。
行，反正以前你也上过102嘛，所以102就来 switch 也不是。
102我就不用准备了，102上来就讲了。
现在很高兴，我忙一每天我都在家里，我不喜欢出去，因为我的猫非常可爱。
是。
He's a really good boy. He's so sweet. 哦。
那个，因为李老师要上那个电影课，所以是一个比较大的、比较那什么，但学生少。
我也不知道，因为如果我电影课，我希望我可以每1个星期1次面对面，因为因为他们没有办法看电影，如果我不给他们看，他们怎么看？因为上网他们要付钱。They'll have to pay for the movie online.
我就是买了电影 I paid it for this Cirque Ballet. I paid.
Well, I can pay for it
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. If you pay this, the program should pay for it. So don't worry about it. How much money then we will.
But if you like buy a movie on Amazon,
you have to watch it in 2 days. So it's really like with the iPad, today is the last day to watch
does
it.
it let you share the screen though, or is it copyright? It does?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So maybe I can do that then. All right.
或者如果李老师你可以用 Zoom share your screen 放电影，然后 record it send it to students。
对，你这不是 record